Hello guys, this your friend Saiyan Paradox Audio Fanfic, and we are back in new fanfic. What if Gine went to Earth with Goku, the Saiyan mother who changed everything? Part 3. The announcer stood over the unconscious form of the tall dark man that had made a rude exit from the ring. It looks like Pampet was just thrown out of the ring and knocked out cold. Which means Jackie Chun is the winner. The audience cheered in shock that such a famous fighter, movie star could be tossed out so effortlessly by the elderly martial artist. But then again, a lot of them remembered the incredible feats he was capable of at the last tournament. A rather embarrassing end for such an amazing actor, folks. Let's hope he does better at the box office. The announcer commentated as the tournament staff carried the fallen star out on a stretcher. Jackie Chun merely chuckled to himself. Gine and the gang watched from the sidelines, remarking how disappointingly fast the fight ended with such two heavy-hitting names like Pampet and Jackie Chun. A measly 10 seconds. Bulma was particularly upset at seeing this star, an idol of hers, get defeated so quickly. Gine thought it was no contest. She knew the tall man called Pampet was all flash but no form. His arrogance was his own undoing when he charged at Chun thinking he was just an old man, and the aforementioned title holder simply ducked and used only his foot to kick under the man and send him flying high up and then straight down into the outside grass boundary unceremoniously. He hit the ground hard enough to put a crater where his face was buried in the dirt, down for a good while. How is this even a tournament if fights are this easy? Gine wondered to herself. But she had to admit how gracefully Roshi Chun moved and redirected his foes' attacks against them somehow without breaking a sweat. Incredible for an old man, and it made her remember how Gohan used to toss her around despite how many times stronger she was. More proof for her that age didn't matter in the world of martial arts. Alright folks, we are gonna take a 30-minute break here and we'll get the third match underway then, so don't go wandering off too far. Hey, plenty of time before the next match. Anyone wanna grab something to eat? Oolong asked. Gine wasn't too hungry since they had another engorging feast earlier that morning, and she had been feeling rather uneasy since she woke up today. But a Saiyan never turned down a chance to eat. Sure, why not, she said, hoping that a little distraction was in order. They all headed towards the food court. It was their third day at the tournament and Gine had yet to sample all the food vendors on the grounds. Despite the disgusting hot dogs being a mainstay dish for this kind of event, there was still a wide variety of other cuisines that smelled far more enticing. So much so that she often wouldn't know where to start. It was among the only really good things she liked about the tournament with so much food around, for obvious Saiyan reasons. Even if some of it was not up to par with her cooking, it was such an experience to taste so much. Or as Gohan once put it to her, variety was the spice of life. She glanced over to Gohan and her momentary good mood faded. Gine had noticed he had been watching her closely since Master Shen visited the restaurant last night, and he seemed cautious and constantly on the lookout for that crane hermit. She somehow didn't like him glancing at her every time she felt agitated or her ki flared up when she was distressed. She loved him dearly and knew he was keeping an eye out for her with everything going on around her and with Crane, but she didn't appreciate this sort of babysitting. Hey, excuse me, can we order some lunch? Bulma called to an approaching vendor. When he looked in their direction, he screamed bloody murder and ran away. They just sat there, confused. That was weird, Oolong finally said. Bulma tried again with another passing staff member. Excuse me, could we order some? That vendor screamed too and ran off as fast as they could in inexplicable terror. What the hell is going on? Bulma asked aloud. You ladies would tell me if there was something on my nose, right? Oolong asked. Gine's mood darkened immediately when she sensed a revoltingly familiar presence approach them. Ah, why the long faces? Came a now too familiar mocking voice. She somehow knew Crane would be there despite all reasoning for him not to be there, and her nerves felt like they were starting to become unraveled by his mere appearances. We want food but no one will serve us. As if they are afraid of us. Bulma complained, also not caring for him being there. It's not you, it's him. Crane pointed towards someone at another booth. They all looked and gasped. Is that a mummy? Bulma asked affrightedly. It was a jacketed figure who seemed to be covered head to toe in gauze. No, it's someone who saw their chances at the title go up in flames at the elimination round, literally. Master Shen cracked. Gine sniffed. Come to think of it, he did smell like smoke and burnt flesh. Launch looked him over with deep pity. Who could be so cruel? Gine looked at the man carefully and sensed that he was in great pain. She looked back at Crane and saw a twinkle in eyes behind the shades he wore. He had to have something to do with this. The third match of the quarterfinals is about to begin. Krillin opposing Chiaotzu. Came the announcement. Hey, Oolong cheered. They said Krillin's up. That's right. Bulma said, accidentally hitting Crane as she got up. And he's gonna knock that creepy doll's block off. And he'll do it for Yamcha. They all got up and headed for the ring before Crane can protest, Gine looking back at him with a mix of contempt and agitation. We really need to make him leave us alone. Gine said aloud. I know. Bulma agreed as they walked. He's such a nuisance. And quite a creep. Oolong added. Gohan looked like he agreed as well, but deep down knew that this sort of thing was starting to get to Gine now that she voiced taking some sort of action. As much as Gine tried to go along with everything around them, she had put up with Crane and his antics and was starting to lose her patience. She made a rushed early morning meditation and could feel that her calming exercises seemed to be having less effect on getting her to feel at ease. And now here she was barely containing her Saiyan feelings of wanting to purge Crane. Knowing what someone as straightforward and unstoppable as she is, he hoped that it would not come to that. They made it back to their spots by the ring just in time to see Krillin step out onto the arena. Gine thought he looked so timid and shy compared to how mischievous she had seen him earlier. So Gine was curious to see if he lived up to being the kind of fighter Kakarot said he was. His opponent, Xiaosu, was the boyish-looking doll or dollish-looking boy that also accompanied Crane with Tien. He was even shorter than Krillin. Gine already had a dislike for how unsettling this expressionless being looked. But after all the irritation Master Shen has caused her, it seemed to be coloring her vision towards anything or anyone associated with that old bag. This is the third match and a sequel of sorts to match 1, as both Turtle and Crane houses suit up for a rematch with Master Roshi's Krillin fighting Master Shen's Xiaosu. Yes, and the outcome will be just the same. Crane chuckled to himself but loud enough for Gine and the gang to hear. Bulma looked over to him angrily. Krillin's gonna win this time, so you can just wipe that smug smile off your face. Gine kept her eye on Crane a little longer, then looked back toward the ring as Oolong returned with a means to cheer on Krillin which she did not care to partake in. She hoped Krillin would win not just to prove he's a good fighter, but to actually follow through on Bulma's declaration and actually irritate Crane for once. So, she silently prayed that Krillin kicked that doll's ass. After a few tense moments, a gong sounded. Let the match begin. For a while nothing happened. Krillin got into stance and Xiaosu still stood there frozen and doll-like. Well, what are you waiting for? Krillin demanded. Contrary to what you've heard, fighting requires movement. Then, Xiaosu started hovering above the tiled floor. Krillin's eyes bulged at this sight, but that was enough to let his guard down and Xiaosu flew at him without warning. He struck Krillin with his body and phasing behind him as Krillin flew back, kicking him around the arena to phase and kick again. Gine was more disturbed by Xiaosu's doll-like manner in which he attacked Krillin without even expressing an emotion on his face, rather than by the fact that he could fly as everyone else was. Krillin was bounced around like a toy, but quickly adapted and broke free of the onslaught. Finding his footing again, Xiaosu tried to launch his flying body at him again, but Krillin went for a strike instead. He landed some punches on Xiaosu and sent the doll reeling. Krillin took advantage of this and pressed his offensive with a power kick. But the doll boy quickly leapt off the ground and just hovered out of reach. A cowardly tactic, if anybody asked Gine. Yet the audience was slack-jawed at the sight of Xiaosu hovering, more than seeing his avoidance of the fight. I assure you folks that this is not an illusion. Xiaosu is actually walking on air. The announcer said, he too in disbelief. I'm seeing it, but I'm not buying it. Oolong said, amazed. It's true. Gine said matter-of-factly. I can do that too, you know. Everyone stared at her in utter shock. How can you just say that? That should be impossible. Bulma said. It doesn't take much, she thought. remembering how she learned to fly on planet Vegeta, just channeling her energy to counteract the pull of gravity. Any more impossible than Kakarot or Yamcha shooting lasers out of their hands. Gohan quipped, backing her up. Bulma said nothing for a moment, unsure how to respond for a good minute. Then turned back to the fight. DODOM Ray. Xiaosu shouted as he fired a heat blast at Krillin. He jumped away from it just in time, but Xiaosu fired another to make him keep having to dodge. A cry came from further down the line of spectators as Gine and the others looked. It was the man they saw earlier wrapped in gauze and smelt like burnt flesh. Gine could feel the anguish coming from him flaring up at the sight of Xiaosu's attack. Is that the? Bulma started. That'll be your friend if he doesn't get out of the way. Crane remarked. Then, the person who burned him was. That's right, Xiaosu. Crane snickered. They all looked at him shocked and horrified, then turned to the ring. They could not believe something as innocent, if not disturbing, looking as that doll boy can do something so horrid. Xiaosu amped up his barrage of Datum rays, blasting the ring around Krillin from his high ground. If he kept it up long enough, Krillin would run out of places to jump or get tired. It was a trap. Krillin, it's too dangerous. Get out. Launch cried out. Yes, girl, if you value your friend's life, then I suggest you persuade him to give up the match. Crane threatened. Gine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Give up the match. Now that Crane was resorting to threatening the lives of her son's friends to make them do something no Saiyan with any ounce of pride would do for some stupid competition, Gine wasn't sure if she could hold herself back from tackling Shen and striking him down where he stood. Krillin, give up. Launch and Bulma cried. No. Came a surprising protest from Oolong. Warriors stay and fight. Gine whipped around to him and stared, amazedly. How could this perverted pig be the voice of reason? He'll win. Oolong said. He will. Gine echoed, then did something she thought she wouldn't do. Go Krillin. Gine stood up and cheered. Show that doll what a real warrior is like. The whole gang stared at her like she had two heads. This was the first time they had ever seen her get involved with what's happening in the tournament since they first arrived. She herself didn't think she would either since it was just a silly competition. Now she was supporting her son's friend like it was all that mattered. Gine felt slightly embarrassed by her loud and proud encouragement. Was this tournament getting to her? But she somehow had got them to lift their spirits from Crane's threats, and they turned to the ring without fear. Yeah, you heard her. Go Krillin. Bulma cheered, then everyone joined her. Hey, cue ball. Grow some backbone, will ya? Blonde Launch said. She must have sneezed without them looking. Gine let her embarrassment slide as they all cheered for him at once. The bombardment continued until it looked like Krillin would have to fly out of the ring, but he made a last-second sidestep and started lightning sprints around the ring in random directions. His erratic movements seemed confusing enough for Xiaosu to come down from the air, wondering what his opponent was up to. Then, Kya, Krillin charged with a flying kick. Xiaosu suddenly lifted himself high up again, letting Krillin fly past under him before he could strike. Krillin looked frustrated that his ruse didn't work, and was now back in the trap he was in. Xiaosu. Crane shouted. Enough playing around. Finish him. What's the matter? Not able to make good on your threats? Bulma mocked. Crane and the gang bickered back and forth, but Gine could sense there was something even more malicious than seen before coming from Crane than she had felt before. Me. Gine whipped her head back to the ring, surprised to see Krillin cupping his hands. He could do that too. Me. Krillin continued the chant, as Xiaosu charged up his attack. No. Krillin. The gang panicked. With the amount of heat and energy charged up from Xiaosu, Krillin was as good as dead. Datum Ray. Xiaosu fired at Krillin, the beam closing the distance to him. Then in speed only she can follow, Gine saw Krillin jump from the attack and perform his erratic sprinting pattern. He held it for a few moments until the dust settled from the blast and suddenly jumped up behind Xiaosu. A blue beam fired from Krillin's cupped hands, and Xiaosu was sent flying. Before she could cheer for Krillin's brilliant move, Xiaosu stopped before hitting the ground. He floated back to the arena worse for wear, still wearing that unsettlingly expressionless look. Damn, she momentarily forgot that he could fly. I'm not surprised that often, but I didn't know Krillin was that strong. Bulma said amazedly. Gine did have to give him credit for being able to do that, a human child pulling off energy attacks only a Saiyan could. The fight continued in earnest with Xiaosu charging Krillin with his whole body used as a ram. Krillin dodged, even when Xiaosu dive-bombed into the ground. Gine swore the fights humans have get weirder and weirder the more she learned and observed. Xiaosu then raised his hands at Krillin, suddenly making him clutch his abdomen in agony. Gine could feel the energy concentrated in his stomach, making it feel like it was on fire. Krillin fell to his knees, groaning in horrible pain. Xiaosu kicked him hard, making Krillin cry out. Gine was appalled. Xiaosu was trying to torture Krillin from the inside out, beating him while he was down where Krillin is feebly able to defend himself. His death will be on you. Crane declared at them. For the murder of my brother Dao. Gine was confused. Dao, as in the cruel mercenary Dao that Kakarot and Chi-Chi defeated. He was his brother. Now this fight was personal. This wasn't just a tournament, this was a fight for survival. She didn't fear for her son as much as she did for his friend, but she felt a twinge of worry somewhere in the back of her mind if Crane had something in store she didn't know about for Kakarot besides this Xiaosu. Krillin was near the edge of the ring, in so much pain he looked like he was going to vomit and pass out. Xiaosu approached him with his glowing hands outstretched and looked at his fallen foe with a smile of malignant glee, the first time Gine had seen him express an emotion. It was horrible. And Krillin looked like he was finished, his efforts and cheers for nothing. Krillin's face suddenly lit up in realization. Hey, what's 9 minus 3? He shouted at Xiaosu. Huh. Xiaosu stopped his energy concentration. He then looked at his fingers in confusion. Well let's see. Seriously. Gine thought in amazement as Xiaosu tried to count his digits. Now, would that be, 5, 7, 8? The boy replied, completely unaware he left himself open and Krillin was back on his feet. Wrong. Krillin shouted as he pounced on him. Xiaosu didn't see the gut punch fast enough to react, clutching his stomach in surprise and agony. With Xiaosu distracted by the pain, Krillin gave him one hard roundhouse kick to the side of his head and Xiaosu was sent out of the ring. He slammed into the spectators' wall and slumped to the grass below, dazed. The answer is 6. Krillin proclaimed to the unconscious Xiaosu before the announcer stepped in. The winner by knockout is Krillin. The crowd went crazy, and so did Gine as she gave a genuine round of applause for her son's best friend. Seeing this brave little human boy triumph against torture with some ingenuity was truly something incredible. Kakarot danced on stage with him, laughing heartedly in victory. Gine looked towards Crane and saw how infuriated he looked, clenching his teeth and feeling the raw and unbarred rage and embarrassment emanating from him. She couldn't help but smirk at him and didn't feel ashamed of it. All his bravado at how unstoppable he and his students were had gone up in smoke. Who would have thought a martial artist would need mathematics? Gohan said amazedly. Gine could only nod at that, still not taking her eyes off of Crane and Tien huffing off and vanishing behind the crowd. Xiaosu was left where he fell for the tournament staff to carry him away in a stretcher. Some teacher he is, Gine said sarcastically as she observed, leaving his pupils to tend to their wounds and suffer for his mistake of messing with Kakarot's friends. Yes, it is. Poor mentorship and regard for his students, no wonder they come off as quite hostile. Yet it is a pity for someone to be left behind so coldly. Gohan remarked. Gine turned to him as everyone cheered around them. He tortured Krillin. He probably would have killed him. I don't feel the least bit sorry for that doll. She said, but somewhere within her Gine felt slightly bad that she would say something like that. But didn't linger on it. Gohan said simply, not wanting to push the matter further with debating how to feel for your enemies after the talk they had yesterday. But then remembered something. Did Master Shen say that mercenary Dao was his brother? Yeah, he did. Gine said, then looked toward where Crane departed. Oh dear. Gohan said gravely. Does he know that it was Kakarot? I'm not sure, but it sounded like he's after revenge for what happened to his brother. She said more to herself. Then she looked at her son leaving the ring with Krillin, worry beginning to set in. Based on what Kakarot told her about Dao, what would his older brother, a martial arts master, be capable of. We should keep an eye on him in case he tries something on Kakarot, and should let Kakarot know too. Gine said. Indeed, we should. Gohan replied, then looked at Gine apologetically. It's unfortunate that you would have to be put under these kinds of stresses for your one outing into the world. Especially with Crane. Gine looked at him and understood the concern he had been showing all day for her. She nodded in agreement. Yeah, now that you mention it. It's been stressful being here, with all the people and noises and things. I never thought Earth could have so much activity in one place where we want to lay low. But with Master Shen being such an antagonizing presence, I've been a bit on edge. Gohan hummed in acknowledgement, we can leave at any time you wish. They would understand, and Kakarot can take care of himself. Gine considered this for a moment. The mountains, the tress, the solitude, the quiet, the smell of the forest, all of it. She could be free from all this drama, and back to the comfortable and lonely home she knew. As much as she adored her son's pursuits and his friends, she couldn't stay to handle more of this constant bombardment on her senses. He could indeed handle himself in battle, and with all his friends and Gohan here, he'll be more than safe from that Master Shen and his henchmen. And she did keep her promise by coming to the tournament to see him fight, even though he hasn't fought yet. But, no, I'll stay. That got Gohan by surprise as Gine went on. I made a promise to Kakarot to watch him fight in the tournament, and I intend to keep it no matter what. Gohan was taken aback but smiled. It's unlike you to take such an interest in all this drama. Gine looked like she was caught. I'm not interested. It's completely banal. Then looked sheepish. And, a little enthralling at the same time. Gohan chuckled. Can't turn away from a good fight, is that it? Gohan thought in the back of his mind that little remark sounded more for her than for Kakarot. Whichever the case, he felt something was going to go down with Crane. And he felt somewhat worried either way. Gine smiled. Yeah, pretty much. Good night, everyone. And congratulations again, Krillin, Bulma said as she went into the girl's room. Same here, buddy. Good night, Oolong called before entering the boys' room. They all stood in the hallway of the hotel they were all staying at for the tournament and were parting ways for the night after another filling feast to celebrate Krillin's victory. They went to the same restaurant as they did the night before as it was really good, but Gine also secretly hoped Crane would be there to see the tables literally turned on him for once. Yet he nor his students weren't there this evening, and she wondered why as they ate. Chi-Chi was the last to enter the girl's room but stopped and looked back. Good luck tomorrow, Kakarot. You're gonna need it, she said playfully before retreating. Now it was just Gohan, Gine, and Kakarot in the hallway. Alright, guess this is good night, Mom, Kakarot said as he hugged Gine. She thought for a moment how much her little boy was growing, and how close he is to his sudden growth spurt and be taller than her before she knew it. But then remembered what she had to say. Kakarot, do you know anything about Master Shen? Her son looked at her for a moment. No, not really, why? Gine sighed, then asked. Did you know that mercenary Dao was his brother? That got Kakarot's attention. No, I didn't know that. Yes, apparently it's true. Gine affirmed. He said he wanted to avenge him by trying to hurt Krillin in his fight with Xiaosu. Would definitely explain why he's been so mean to us, but didn't know he was as cruel as Dao was. Kakarot thought of that mercenary and frowned. I'm not sure he is, but hopefully he isn't. Gohan offered. Does he know it was you who killed him? Kakarot looked thoughtful. I dunno, I hope he doesn't. He then said, I only mentioned Dao when talking about that move Xiaosu was using, that Dao used it. Tien heard me and walked off. Kakarot realized what he said and as he jogged more of that memory, he grew worried. Maybe he does. Tien walked away from our stand after talking with Jackie Chun about him. Gine and Gohan could fill in the blanks of what that could mean. He most likely knows, Gine said, with some resignation and worry in her voice. We'll keep an eye out for him if he tries anything. Gohan said, then gestured toward the boys' bedroom. Let's get some rest, Kakarot. Your mother, Roshi, and I will keep you safe. Kakarot looked at them determined. Don't worry, if he comes near me, I'll be happy to fight him. He pounded a fist into an open palm, eager to have an excuse to fight. Gine sighed. All right then, but in the meantime let's go to bed. She hugged Kakarot and Gohan one more time before parting ways to their respective bedrooms. Be careful, Gine said to them as they entered the room, but didn't hear her as the door closed. She was thinking why she said those words for some reason as she turned back into the room where all the other girls were already tucked in and fast asleep. Bulma snoring loudly and Launch somehow blonde in her sleep. Hopefully she wouldn't wake up and cause a racket. Gine took off her shoes and slipped into her hotel bed, trying to let her tiredness of the day overtake her. But tired as she was, sleep was having trouble claiming her. She could sense the energies of Kakarot, Gohan, and the others in the room next to her. She knew they were safe and sound asleep. Yet something kept her from dozing off and wanting to just keep an eye on them. She kept sensing them for a time, an hour then two of just lying in bed listening to dead silence and snoring. Her eyelids grew heavier and heavier as she slowly slipped into unconsciousness. A slight screeching sound of glass being scratched made her hypersensitive ears perk up, and Gine was jolted awake. There was a faint scent in the air too coming from the window. She knew that scent, and as she felt around for the key of her sleeping companions, she felt the presence of another key just entering the boys' room. Entering from the outside of a 10-story building. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she suddenly knew who it was. Gine flew out of her bed and rushed out of the room, slamming the door open and startling the other girls awake. Wheeling around the corner towards the boys' hotel room, she kicked the door down as if it weren't there. Almost everyone in the room sprang up from the door crashing. Ah, it wasn't me, I swear. Roshi cried out drearily, still half asleep and in dreamland. He didn't notice the shape that Gine was staring at as she burst into the room. She saw a masked figure with dark shades and dressed in black standing over Kakarot's bedside, his hands pointed down at him like knives as if readying a killing blow. Wah, Mom. Kakarot hadn't fully woken up yet, but the assailant next to him saw her and froze. You! She screamed. The assailant flinched in surprise, then turned and leapt to the glass window. She was not going to let someone hurting her son get away. The glass window shattered as the assailant leapt out of the building, trying to slip away into the night. But in a rush of air that destroyed the rest of the room's decor and drowned out her friend's cries of shock, Gine dived out of the window after the figure using her Saiyan speed to catch up with him easily. She reached out and grabbed his ankle before he could land on the ground, coming to a jarring halt in midair. Ow! The figure cried when he realized he was caught, hanging upside down by his ankle where she held. She immediately recognized his voice. Crane. She hovered higher up to the room they jumped out of, still hanging on to Crane by his ankle. Kakarot and the whole gang was looking out in bewilderment at what just happened, including the girls who came out to see what the commotion was. They gathered at the railing to see who she caught. She held him up high with one arm, but not enough to reach eye level. Reaching down with her free hand, Gine yanks off the mask covering his face. Why did you try to attack my son in his sleep? She demanded, looking down on him while he was suspended. Crane just looked at her, entirely dumbstruck at how this strange woman barged out of nowhere to thwart his plot, catch him in midair, and demanding answers from him like he's the subject and not the master. All the while she was holding him up so indignantly like a rabbit about to be skewered. And she was flying. Then another thought crossed his mind as her words registered. Kakarot was her son. He saw the shape of a tail whipping around behind her, just like the boy's tail. She had to be. But this was all so much to take in. He tried to gather himself up from this turn of events. Isn't it obvious? Crane angrily stated, loud enough for those on the hotel balcony to hear too. He murdered my brother Dao. Some of the gang gasped when they heard Master Shen's words, looking at Kakarot as if looking for an explanation. Not on purpose, Kakarot said, as he collected himself from this rude awakening. He killed my friend's father and attacked me and Chi-Chi. We defended ourselves. Yeah, Chi-Chi backed him up. And then he pretended to give up and threw a grenade at us, we kicked it right back at him. It doesn't matter how it happened, my brother's death is on you, and he must be avenged. Crane said furiously. No one is killing anyone tonight. Gine said, and based on what I've heard about your brother, he got what he deserved. Crane growled with the fury of a feral animal. How dare you? You insolent woman. I'd ought to show you who. Gine squeezed his ankle where she held him. With her Saiyan strength, it was like being caught in a hydraulic press. The bones crunched easily and satisfyingly in her grip. He howled in agony as his ankle was crushed. Don't you dare speak to me that way, you maniacal old fool. Gine shot back. Crane was too overpowered by the pain of his now broken leg to counter and could only writhe in her grip like a fish plucked from water. You never threaten my child, especially when I'm holding you this high above the ground. Gine said with a menacing tone that made Crane show a twinge of fear in his eyes through the pain. Master! Came a shout below. Gine instantly knew it was Tien. She looked fast and saw that he was jumping up from below, trying to intervene and go for her. Gine reacted before Tien could counter. Without letting her captive Crane go from her grip, she spun around to face Tien just as he was within reach of her. Crane screamed even harder when he was twisted with his broken ankle around in the air. Then, she swept her leg under Crane and landed a solid kick into Tien's side with incredible speed and force, all in one fluid motion. She kicked him in the chest hard enough to hear one of his ribs crack and send him straight into the ground below. Tien shattered the concrete where he impacted and bounced away like a rag doll until he came to stop, groaning and barely moving. Gine was surprised that he wasn't dead from that blow, considering her strength among humans. This Tien guy must be a lot stronger than average. Everyone could only stare in shock, especially Crane when he realized what happened. He stumbled for words, failing at the sight of his star pupil beaten aside in just one blow as if he were nothing. Beaten by this woman. How are you this strong? Was all he could say. Then, as some of his wits came back and realized something else that had been happening, and how can you fly? That's impossible. Only I know that technique. Gine didn't answer. He didn't deserve answers. She glared at him with daggers. And Crane, realizing how helpless he was against her and how his best fighter was useless to save him, could only cower and shudder at what other feats this strange-tailed woman could do to him. For Gine this felt oddly empowering. She was focused primarily on getting through to Crane about what he's done. But in the back of her mind, she was savoring the fact that she could easily kill this man by breaking every bone in his body or throwing him into the ground hard enough to make him a red splatter. And not just as any bloodthirsty Saiyan would to anyone else, but to someone who had been such a bother to her, Kakarot, and their friends. For once, she was now going to teach someone the price of getting on her nerves and threatening the people she cared about. Something she never had in her entire life. That notion made her blood boil even more, and Gine's thoughts clouded from all the times she remembered she had no control of anything in her life. All those times she had been put down and shoved around on planet Vegeta by her fellow Saiyans, unable to fight back since she was too weak. And then, having that fact turned upside down, being the strongest on planet Earth but always having to hold back lest she hurt someone, especially Gohan. Not now though, she thought. Now, she was not going to hold back on Crane. She was going to make him suffer, make him afraid of her. And she unconsciously squeezed harder on his broken leg, making Crane let out a tortured cry. Gine! Roshi and Gohan shouted at her. She snapped out of her red haze and spun around to see that the gang and other hotel guests could see what was going down. She had been hovering there for over a minute and made such a ruckus that people came out to see what was happening. She also noticed the damage she did to the room while trying to go after Crane. Gohan looked at her with a mix of pleading and consternation. He is beaten. Let him go, he said slowly, but firmly. Kakarot stood next to him, but looked like he wished he could join his mom to help bring out Crane for what he was going to do. Gine turned to Crane, who was breathing raggedly, and saw how frightened and in pain he looked. She then realized what Gohan meant. Crane was no longer a threat to Kakarot, but now she was willingly causing him pain when he couldn't defend himself. She felt a wave of overwhelming guilt wash over her. How could she do this? She'd never hurt anyone on purpose, the very thing she hated most. She had been through far too much to do something like that. She didn't know what came over her. Those dark thoughts of helplessness really set her off, and she shouldn't let them control her. She's caused too much of a scene already and should have just dealt with it like an adult instead of like a Saiyan. Gine nodded apologetically and closed her eyes briefly. It took a certain amount of willpower to recall Gohan's teachings and breathed shaky, trying to calm herself down. After few moments, her thoughts of violence faded. Crane, however, saw that she had closed her eyes that thought now he should try to escape. Still in a daze from a broken leg, he used his other one to try and kick Gine. She grabbed it with her other hand and looked him in the eye angrily. Crane horrifyingly felt as if he had made the biggest mistake in his life. Gine was calm again, but calmly angry. She still wasn't going to let Crane off easily. She floated down to the ground where Tien was struggling to stand up again and released her grip, dropping Crane. He yelped as his broken leg thumped to the ground and panted as the pain hit him in waves. Tien clutched his very bruised side and tried to help his master up. "I think you and your minions should leave," she told Master Shen flatly but with authority. "Never bother us or make moves on my son again. Or else you are going to regret it with more than just another broken leg." She let that threat hang in the air. She meant it. Tien held up Crane with his free arm to help his master hop on his good leg, then looked at Gine. A momentary flash of fear went across his face, remembering how she so effortlessly struck him aside and almost killed him with one blow. His martial artist mind was horrified that someone this strong exists and could brush him, aside like he was nothing. However, he was also fascinated by this unknown warrior. She may be even stronger than the fighters of legend. But his loyalty to his master kicked in and looked at her aghast. "You think we are just gonna walk away when you broke a poor and defenseless old man's leg?" Crane looked slightly encouraged by his protege's words and tried to look accusingly at Gine as well. "Why yeah. You broke my leg. What you did was uncalled for and cruel. And maybe a rib," Tien said, pointedly clutching his side and winching. "You may ha." Gine didn't have time for this. "You broke Yamcha's leg when he was out cold and unable to defend himself." "Fair is fair," Gine said without missing a beat. "Fair?" Crane exclaimed. "You wanna talk fair? Your son killed my dear brother. I have sworn to avenge him no matter what." "No, you won't," came Kakarot's voice, surprising them all. He ran up to them and stood beside his mother. Mercenary Dao was a cruel and murderous monster. He deserved to die for killing innocent people. He shot at them. The rest of the gang looked like they were behind him a ways trying to catch up and see what was going on. Crane looked ready to throttle him even with a broken leg. "And besides, I let you live after you tried to murder a child, my child, in his sleep. That's more than you cowards deserve." Gine added. "Yeah, that's something only someone sneaky would do. Not a true warrior." Kakarot backed up his mother, both of them standing together vindictively. Neither Crane nor Tien said anything at that. Tien looked more hit by that one statement than the broken rib. His three eyes flaring into a cold stare at her which Gine didn't flinch from. "Leave, before I change my mind and break both of you in ways that will make you useless as warriors," she said with as much conviction as she could muster, sounding a lot like as she remembered Bardock sounded like to his enemies. She curiously wondered if he knew how much she learned from him. Humiliated, enraged, frightened, and in great pain, Crane had no choice but to relent. Wordlessly, Tien guided a limping Crane around and walked away to the hotel they were staying at. Both of them groaning at their injuries sustained from Gine. Before they get far enough away, Tien looked back at them. "You may have lost your son's place in the tournament for injuring us outside the ring," he said with some hesitation. Gine didn't say anything, but she felt guilt wash over her at that too. But Kakarot interjected. "No, I didn't. She's not fighting, she just defended me from your non-participating master. You just got in the way." Tien thought about that for a moment. "Even so, this isn't over. If anything, this has only just begun." Crane said nothing and just kept looking at them with pure hatred. "Then we can take this up when we meet again. In the ring," Kakarot declared, his tail whipping around with anger and excitement. Tien turned to leave with his master. "Whatever suits you, just don't lose any matches between now and then." Tien shouted threateningly and walked away with Crane without looking back. Kakarot smirked, excited by the challenge. I'll do my best, he said to himself. They stood there until Crane and Tien were out of sight, then Gine collapsed to her knees shaking. Mom, are you okay? Kakarot rushed to her side, clutching her in worry as the rest of the gang arrived in tow. Are you two okay? Gohan asked. Gine wanted to sob uncontrollably but tried to control herself in front of his friends, but they saw how vulnerable she looked and were immediately more concerned. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Gine said between hicks of her choking breaths, putting her face in her hand. For what? Kakarot asked incredulously. I shouldn't have let them get the better of me. Now I caused so much trouble. She said. Are you kidding? That was awesome, he said with amazement that made Gine look at him. Her tears stopped. Yeah, you gave that bully what he had coming. Bulma cheered from behind. The rest of the gang followed suit. That was truly something else, the way you handled them bozos. Said Blonde Launch in awe. Can you teach me how to do that? And given him a taste of their own medicine. Oolong said with a cracking noise and bending his hands in a breaking motion. You avenged Yamcha good. Yeah, way to go, Gine. They all said in one way or another. Chi-Chi, Krillin, Turtle, Puar, Bulma, Launch, and Kakarot all gave her nothing but how awesome she was. Gine couldn't believe the praise she was given. You go, girl, Bulma said. Gine was slightly perplexed by that type of praise but took it anyway. Truth be told, she wasn't even sure how to feel. Causing pain to someone else went against everything she believed in, yet she stood up for herself and her friends. Why did she have to feel this way? Roshi and Gohan looked gravely concerned. Are you alright? Gohan asked first. Gine didn't think she could look at him. I'm sorry I got carried away. It's alright, Gine. Gohan said softly as he helped her up. I could sense all the mixed emotions you were having. But you are not to blame for defending your son. Gine looked at him and saw how sincere he was. That was true at least. But still, after the lapse into something she never thought she'd experience. Gohan could sense what she was thinking and told her, try not to overthink it, Gine. I know you. You are a good person. Don't ever forget that. He was right. Gohan knew everything about what she told him of her. And could guess that such a feeling of having power for the first time after a life of abuse could do to someone, or how it would make someone act. But he was not going to judge her for it. Gine smiled at Gohan, wiping away her tears. I don't know what I'd do without you. Gine, I'm very sorry you got put in this situation. Roshi said, I know you only came to watch your son fight in the tournament and not get caught up in some feud. Gine thought of it, her sadness that overtook her a moment ago now gone. It's okay. None of us knew this would happen. Mercenary Dao was a horrible person. His brother is no different. Chi-Chi declared. Roshi's disturbed look didn't change. Still, Crane is out for Kakarot's blood nonetheless. We need to make sure things won't take a turn for the worst. It may be inevitable, but we have to keep things to a minimum. Gine thought about it. Right. Then looked to Kakarot. This little vendetta of Crane's is not something that is going to go away. But we still have your back, son. Thanks, Mom, said Kakarot as he hugged her. Gine returned the embrace, and her heart was filled with nothing but love for her son, and resolve. No matter what, you beat the Tien guy and show Crane who's boss. She whispered. They parted and Kakarot looked her in the eye. I will, he declared, sounding more determined than she had ever heard before. The next morning, Kakarot was scarfing down several meals worth of food. Try not to choke, alright. Krillin joked as he watched his best friend stuff his face. Kakarot kept eating as if he didn't listen. Geez, what manners you have. Chi-Chi said while looking away in disgust. Hope your mother taught you too. Gine was also stuffing her face with a large breakfast, her mouth as full as Kakarot's. Chi-Chi just sighed in defeat. Both mother and son set their last plates down, with Kakarot punctuating his with, done. Everyone else was too awestruck by the towers of bulls the two Saiyans went through to fully satiate their hunger. Kakarot almost fell over as his food coma set in. Chi-Chi scoffed, hope you'll be able to at least stand up during the fight. Sorry, Kakarot burped, which gave him a good slap on the head from his mother. Ow, sorry, he said again, meaning it this time. At least you feel quite well and full of spirit today. Gohan said as he helped Kakarot up to his feet, then turned to Gine who was still basking in the euphoria of a good meal. I talked to Yamcha this morning. Bulma said to them. He said he saw Crane and his crony Tien at the hospital earlier this morning, getting checked in for a broken leg and broken rib too. Bulma said almost gloating. Yamcha said he was amazed to hear that Gine was so strong as to put both Tien and Crane in their places. Ha! Blonde Launch said. Looks like you guys might win after all with those boozos dealt with. Now it's just that old geezer, Jackie, to beat. Jackie-chun is not a geezer. Roshi said indignantly. Then caught himself before he could give himself away more. I dunno. Kakarot said. I don't think we'd seen the last of Tien and Crane, and I'd hate to not get a chance to fight them. Even with all the injuries they sustained. Oolong asked. Hard to believe they'd be back for more after having their butts kicked. He punctuated with a sly glance at Gine. Yep. Gohan said sadly. Someone like Crane won't give up so easily. Gine was slightly worried by those possibilities. She knew that stupid people could be so determined sometimes. But she felt secure they could easily deal with them after she had demonstrated what happened when someone crossed her. Or at least, she hoped. Roshi turned to her. And how are you feeling, dear? Much better. Gine said. She went through a lot the previous night with fighting off Crane and being made mortal enemies of his school, but with her friends and a good breakfast, she felt like herself again. Good. Roshi said as they all got up from the table. Then are we ready to dive back into the action? Yeah, everyone cheered. Even Gine felt a surge of excitement, for she could feel this was going to be a good day somehow. It was now day 4 of the tournament, and despite the culture shock, Gine almost felt at home here now. Looking around and seeing all the spectators still made her irate with all the pushing and shoving and noises, but she felt she was getting used to it enough to make it through still sane. Crane was nowhere to be seen, she noticed. And she wondered if that was a good or bad thing. The referee stepped out onto the ring with his microphone, and a buzz erupted as the action was about to get underway. And now, ladies and gentlemen, is about time we begin the fourth and final match of the quarterfinals. Let's welcome our fighters. First up, is the second place winner of the last tournament, Son Kakarot. They all cheered as Gine's little boy stepped onto the ring. He looked wide awake now that his food-induced coma was gone, and he was taking in all the applause from his friends. Gine was amazed at how, unlike her son was not timid or shy in front of crowds at all. To him, it must have felt like it was just another day of training but with more spectators. Gine also realized that it was day 4 of the tournament and it took this long for her to actually see him compete. Took them long enough, but here he was. And she was going to cheer him on at last. Yay! Kakarot! His friends cheered for him. Gine smiled and waved at him, and he did the same in return as he noticed her. Then the announcer waved towards Kakarot's competitor, Chi-Chi, to step into the ring. Next, we have the young and fiery warrior princess, Chi-Chi. This lovely young lady may seem sweet and innocent folks, but she has proved in the preliminaries that she can hold her own against the boys. They all cheered for Chi-Chi too as she stepped out onto the ring. Instead of her trademark battle bikini, Chi-Chi wore a blue and red trimmed fighting dress but kept her pink gloves and boots. She couldn't wear her helmet so her long ink black hair flowed around her. Gine applauded for her too. She was curious to see how much of a fighter Chi-Chi was. From what Kakarot told her, the young girl had become quite a competent sparring partner over the course of their travels together and from some coaching here and there. At least she would be a better challenge than all the other fighters Gine saw during the preliminaries. Kakarot and Chi-Chi stared each other down playfully. I can't wait to wipe that smirk off your face for good. Chi-Chi bantered. I'd like to see you try. Kakarot retorted. Seems like Kakarot and Chi-Chi have quite a history between them, and it's about to unfold here in the ring. You wanted a good fight, well here we go. The crowds went crazy, then silent in anticipation as the drums sounded slowly at first, then faster and faster until the gong. Ready fighters. And begin. Yaa. Chi-Chi went after him with everything she had, relentlessly sending jabbing strikes and kicks at Kakarot that he dodged expertly. He returned her attacks with punches of his own that she blocked just in time. He was much better than her at counter-attacking, but Chi-Chi was very fast and slipped out of his punching range and went after him again, pressing her offensive hard. She kept up her attack for a good minute as Kakarot parried her barrage of jabbing strikes and jumped back out of her reach. He got into a stance readying to attack. Chi-Chi was surprised. Last time they fought, she used this same attack and managed to constantly hit Kakarot until he was too dazed to defend himself. It was a series of moves she had put to good use against the Red Ribbon Army battle suits she and Kakarot went up against. They would literally fall apart after such an attack from them, and it made quite a good sparring move against Kakarot if she wanted a quick win. But now it seemed like he had really gotten stronger in the last 3 years to last this long. Is that all you got? Chi-Chi taunted, ready to launch herself again. Kakarot chuckled, I'm just getting warmed up. They jumped high up, clashing in the air and trading blows. From the flurry of movements and the force of blows, they looked evenly matched. Look at them go, Bulma said in awe, the rest of the gang and audience captivated by the action. But Gine could see that Kakarot's strikes were more painful to Chi-Chi while he didn't seem affected at all by hers, let alone breaking a sweat from the effort. Chi-Chi was using all of her energy at the start to get a quick knockout, but Kakarot was not tiring out as fast as she hoped to. And he conserved his energy and defended himself very well, anticipating her moves until Chi-Chi tired herself out instead. After a long mid-air fight to the ground, they kicked each other away and landed on the ring. Chi-Chi looked worn down and out of breath, while Kakarot looked like he was having a good time. His tail twirling in excitement, and glad at himself that his defensive strategy and training worked. What's the matter, Chi-Chi? Can't put me down as fast as you used to. He poked back at her. Chi-Chi growled under her breath. She hated this. Kakarot had somehow adapted to her attacks so he couldn't be knocked out at all. Worse yet was she knew that she was now on the back foot. She had gone all out and didn't have enough energy left to start another offense. It seemed like she might mostly be knocked out if they went at it again. But she still had one last-ditch move she could do. It's a dirty trick, but with it she could win. Kakarot, you better prepare yourself for this. Chi-Chi declared, then cupped her hands. Me. Chi-Chi knows it too now. Gine thought. She figured Kakarot must have taught her on their adventures. Me. Chi-Chi continued, a glow of blue energy shone in her hands. Chi-Chi, don't do that. You'll just waste energy on me. Kakarot said, trying to reason with her. She fired the wave. A modest-sized but powerful energy beam flew from her hands directly at Kakarot. He stopped it effortlessly with punching the beam head-on, and the resulting explosion lit up the whole arena as everyone briefly turned away to shield their eyes. The smoke cleared and Kakarot didn't look fazed at all, but Chi-Chi had disappeared from her spot. Kakarot looked around confused. Suddenly, he cried out in pain. Chi-Chi was behind him, and she had grabbed his tail. Kakarot realized too late that the attack was a distraction, and she got behind him before he could act. Let's face it, Kakarot, your tail is your weakness. She squeezed hard, making him scream harder and fall to his hands and knees. Uh-oh, folks, it looks like Chi-Chi has Kakarot in a painful spot. The referee commentated. Gine was aghast. Now that was a sneaky move on Chi-Chi's part. But it's true that it was a critical weak point. Gine almost felt disappointed in her son for letting his guard down like that, and he fell right into a classic Saiyan trap that she watched in painful slow motion. No fair. Kakarot croaked out between gritted teeth, the pain looked so debilitating. Doesn't matter, you still have a weak spot that anyone else could have used. Chi-Chi said teasingly. She tightened her grip even harder, sending Kakarot writhing in agony on the ground on the brink of passing out. Say you give up and I'll let go. Chi-Chi demanded. Now that was low to ask of any Saiyan, Gine thought as she watched. Never. Kakarot cried. Fine then, said Chi-Chi, before she squeezed as hard as she could. Kakarot didn't even scream as he simply went limp, as if he blacked out cold from the sheer shock of the pain. 1, 2. The referee began the countdown as Kakarot didn't get back up. Gine couldn't believe it, he was gonna lose the tournament just like that. 3, 4. Chi-Chi giggled at the seemingly unconscious Kakarot. I hope you're not mad at me, Kakarot. I did what I had to do, just like you. 5. 6. Then, Chi-Chi noticed Kakarot's lips curling into a mischievous grin. 7. 8. Gotcha! Kakarot shouted as he sprung up suddenly. Chi-Chi had no time to react as, with her still holding onto his tail, Kakarot leapt right over Chi-Chi, landed behind her, lifted her by his tail, and flung her like a catapult straight out of the ring, all in one fluid motion. Chi-Chi screamed in surprise as she landed with a hard thud on the grass surrounding the arena. The referee was stunned too but acted quickly. Whoa! Chi-Chi is out. Kakarot is the winner. Chi-Chi, who appeared to be dominating Kakarot, now appears completely flabbergasted after being literally thrown from the ring. A surprising end to yet another exciting match. Kakarot stepped down from the ring to help Chi-Chi up. Are you alright? He asked worriedly if he threw her too hard. She looked as furious as she looked confused. How did you do that? I grabbed your tail. You shouldn't have been able to defend yourself, let alone stand. Kakarot chuckled. I've been training my tail while I was away. I was getting tired of it being a weakness, so I toughened it up, so it won't happen again. Gine was amazed. It was also a sneaky move on his part and cutting it real close with the countdown too, but what he did was ingenious. So he did listen, Roshi said aloud. Gine turned to him. I mentioned to him in passing that his tail was a weakness and should do something about it, but he seemed so carefree that he just went along with it. I did try to help him with that. Gine explained. He came to me and asked him to help toughen up his tail. I thought he didn't catch on since he passed out every time. Roshi hummed thoughtfully. But you forget that you are quite possibly the strongest person on this planet, and if he could still stand up just a few seconds longer against you, then nothing as humans could do would cripple him with his tail. And to pretend being rendered helpless and passing out, in turn making Chi-Chi lower her guard instead. Gohan gave his thoughts. That was brilliant. Indeed, it is. Gine agreed. Sneaky still, but in a life or death fight it could be invaluable. His determination is his greatest strength. With it, he could accomplish anything he sets his mind to. Roshi remarked thoughtfully. Gine stared at her son with a swell of pride in her heart. How Kakarot could surprise her every day with how much he could learn never ceased to amaze her. It made her think of the words Gohan said so long ago. Everyone has the potential to be great if they set their minds to it. Gine looked at Gohan knowingly. It almost sounded like something Bardock would say. How he tried to claw his way up the ranks through taking on the most difficult battles he could, that he tried to be something better than what he was born for. And now here was Kakarot. A child of a low-class warrior and already proving to be more than what he was given at birth. Just like his father. Then she wondered, if he could do it, could she as well? At that thought, Gine shook her head, as if automatically brushing off that idea with a, like that's ever going to happen. She never dared entertain the idea that she could be better than what she was. Bardock and Kakarot had the genes to improve their strength, but not her. Right. Meanwhile, Kakarot was wiggling his tail in front of Chi-Chi. Go ahead, grab it as hard as you can and see if I can feel it. He challenged. But Chi-Chi did not take kindly to this mocking from him. That was really sneaky of you pretending to be passed out. She shouted at him angrily. Kakarot looked her in the eye in mock seriousness. Is it any sneakier than grabbing me by the tail? Chi-Chi tried to retort back but stopped herself. She looked ashamed now, but Kakarot chuckled. Don't worry, Chi-Chi. I'm not mad at you. It was so much fun to fight with you. He said reassuringly and placed a hand on her shoulder. Chi-Chi's face lit up again and she hugged him tightly. Oh, Kakarot, you are the sweetest thing in the whole world. She cooed flirtatiously. Kakarot was unsure what to make of it. I dunno, I always thought cinnamon rolls were the sweetest thing in the world. He said innocently. At that, Chi-Chi backed off, and slapped Kakarot hard across the face. Ow, rude. Chi-Chi seethed before turning on her heel and huffing off back to the fighter's temple, calling over her shoulder with, I will beat you one day, Kakarot. A confused Kakarot sat where he fell from the slap, caressing his cheek. What was that for? He asked to no one in particular. Later, They were having lunch in the food court with Jackie Chun. You two did very well today, Gine said to her son and Chi-Chi. Thanks, Mom, Kakarot said. You almost gave us a scare with your tail being grabbed. Krillin quipped. Yeah, I know, but it was a neat trick I've been wanting to do for a while since it's a lot stronger now, Kakarot said innocently, unaware of Chi-Chi turning a furious red next to him. Bet you've been wanting to trick me into losing. She fumed. Hey, that's not true. Kakarot defended himself. It could have been Krillin I was up against and would have used it against him. Not anymore, you won't, Krillin said, looking as if he was thinking hard. Chi-Chi didn't look convinced and just pouted where she sat. Kakarot sat there unsure of how to appease her. I'm sorry about that, though, he said softly. That got Chi-Chi to turn to him with a smile this time. It's okay, Kakarot. Next time though, I'll know not to use that, and it'd be a fair fight next time. Deal, she said, her determination back. Deal, he said with an outstretched hand to shake hers, but instead Chi-Chi surprised him with a hug. Oh, such a gentleman you are. Chi-Chi swooned. Krillin groaned in disgust at the sight. Ah, get a room, you two. Gine chuckled to herself seeing them interact. Gine admired Chi-Chi's fighting spirit even though she was way too strong-willed. She guessed that's why Kakarot liked her besides her feistiness. And how close they had gotten during their adventures. She could see it now that Chi-Chi would definitely have made a good mate if she was born a Saiyan. Gods help them if she ever fought as one. Then they heard the call. The first match of the semi-finals is about to begin. Jackie Chun against Tien Shinhan. It's time. Let's go, said Chun. They all knew what it meant, so they all wordlessly got up and went back to the arena. Gine wondered not for the first time during the tournament how anyone else around here didn't immediately figure out that Chun was indeed Roshi. It's now time to begin the fifth match, and the semi-finals of the tournament, just halfway to the championship and determining who will become the next master of martial arts. They got back to their spots and saw Jackie Chun took up his place to enter the ring. Tien was out of view from where they were. Gine scanned the audience and felt herself sour when she saw Master Shen among them. But she saw that his leg was bandaged up in a cast like Yamcha's, and used a crutch for his bad leg. And he didn't look like his conniving self but rather pained and annoyed. Look who decided to show up, Bulma said out loud and pointing at Crane. Crane noticed that they were all looking at him and made eye contact with Gine. His irate scowl turned to pure hatred at the sight of her. Gine looked back at him unflinchingly and glanced at his broken leg, as if telepathically daring him to challenge her again. After a long stare down, Crane wordlessly turned back towards the ring. Ha, he's got nothing to say now, Oolong boasted by sly elbowing Gine. Everyone seemed to agree as well. Gine herself was satisfied, but didn't take her eyes off of him. Here they come, said the referee. The one and only Jackie Chun, the current title holder of World Martial Arts Champion. Followed by Tien Shinhan of the Crane Hermit School. Jackie Chun walked out onto the arena. A moment later, Tien Shinhan stepped out onto the ring as well. His bare chest was wrapped in bandages, and he winced in pain whenever the inside of his arm brushed against his chest. Some in the audience gasped and the referee took a look at him and exclaimed, "My goodness, what happened to you, Mr. Shinhan?" Tien looked at him expressionlessly. "I had an accident." He looked away, embarrassed and enraged. "I cracked a rib." "What?" The referee was baffled. "Then why are you here? You shouldn't even be thinking of fighting with injuries like that." "I'm here to fight, no matter what," Tien said angrily, wincing as he did. "I will not let some minor handicap stop me from winning this tournament." "Don't be too stupid," Jackie Chun said from his spot. "No one should be fighting with a broken rib." He is right. And we at the tournament staff don't take responsibility for any injuries that happen from pre-existing conditions," the referee said, trying to reason and clear himself. Tien glared at him as if he had been insulted. "Didn't you just hear me? I said I'm going to fight no matter what. So, let's get on with it," he yelled at them, making the referee step back in fright. Jackie Chun just stood there and looked disconcerted at Tien, then shrugged. "Very well then, don't say I didn't warn you." Gine was incredulous. Was Tian really going to fight with a cracked rib? And all the dangers that come with it? She immediately glanced towards Crane, who just watched silently. He had to be up to something, putting his injured student through this. If they wanted to, Crane could have just blurted out to the tournament staff that she, another contestant's family member, had injured him and his pupil outside the ring. And that would disqualify them all for good. But he wasn't. So why was Tian doing this? No answer came to mind. There had to be a reason. But if there wasn't, then perhaps this guy was just extremely tenacious. After going on stage despite everything she did to him the night before, she was willing to grant him that. Perhaps he had more honor than his master. As ridiculous as that sounded. Well, either way, if Tian was determined to fight in his current condition, then who was she to be against it? This should still be interesting. And they had a better chance at winning if a rib punctured his lung. Or if they take this fight out of the tournament, if that happened another day, that is. The referee was baffled by this turn of events but decided not to anger Tian further and get on with it as ordered. Very well, then. Despite the warnings, Tian Xinhan is going to proceed with the fight with a broken rib, folks. Let's hope he has a strategy to win, but we'll keep the medical staff on standby. The crowd murmured at this, and Gine felt somehow uncomfortable that Crane and Tian weren't giving up so easily. Quick reminder folks. Flash photography is prohibited unless you catch my good side, haha, but in all seriousness, get ready for a stellar fight. Tian stared Chun down, ignoring his pain. Champion or not, I will defeat you. Chun waved him off. Take it easy. You shouldn't stress yourself out, it'll make you lose your hair. Tian did nothing that on that attack on his baldness. After a few tense moments, the gong rang out. Ready. You may begin. Chun took up a defensive position, while Tian charged. Almost immediately Chun parried every attack Tian threw. Then, Jackie Chun grabbed him by the arm and threw him high and out of the ring. It looked like a certain victory. Tian suddenly stopped midair and turned around. Jine's heart sank momentarily. He too could fly. Kakarot's head perked up from his observation spot on the participants, catching Jine's eye. She saw him watching Tian and his fingers snapped as if to say aha. Gine wondered what that was about. When Tian landed he went after Chun again, they met and flew up, exchanging evenly matched blows in swift and fluid moves. Tian put in extra care to block his broken rib, making him attack less. Jackie Chun looked like he wasn't putting any effort into his moves. Gine could sense that his breathing was calm and still. Then Chun makes a charge, and suddenly splits into 8 different apparitions of himself around Tian, all spinning around and striking him as if separately. The mirror image technique. Gohan called it. But Gine could see that it was just Chun moving too fast for regular eyes to follow him to appear as if there were more than one of him. But her Saiyan eyes could see how fast he was moving. Apparently, Tian could too since he chose one of the mirror images as the real Chun to kick, and it was indeed the real Chun as Tian's kick sent him flying into the wall. The fight got more serious, trading equally vicious blows and punches that left both of them bruised and clutching themselves in pain. Gine noticed Chun hadn't gone for Tian's rib yet. At least that's what she would have done. If Tian's pain tolerance was as high as Jackie Chun was strong, who would win was anyone's guess. Tian launched into the air towards the sun, and tried to attack with it blinding Chun, but to no avail. Chun held his own until pushed to the edge of the ring, just barely holding on but gets in. They get into a body lock, clutching each other to crush or push away. The tension in the air was thick and leaving everyone on edge. Chun crushed Tian's ribs in his grip, he cried and spat out some blood. It was enough to make Tian blinded by pain to let his guard down, and Chun headbutts him. The force of it sent Tian falling back and Chun easily stepped back into the center of the ring. A huge breath of relief, Tian clutching his bloodied nose and rib, furious. You're very gifted, Tian. Chun said, panting. But you squander your talent with rotten ethics. Tian growled at him. I'm only here to win, what else could I be? Chun was confused, and watched unawares as Tian held both his opened hands in front of his face. Solar flare. The entire world went white. Gine shut her eyes too slowly as her retina and the retinas of everyone in the arena who wasn't wearing shades burned. Everyone cried out in shock and pain as they all clutched their eyes as if they were trying to claw them out, even seeing the light through their closed eyelids and adding to the spots in their vision. Chun was no exception and was entirely incapacitated by the flash of blinding light. Unable to defend himself from the pain of blindness and letting his guard down, Tien rushed behind Chun and struck the back of his neck. Gine instinctively went for the shades in her pocket but still had to reluctantly open her eyes as her vision recovered. Through the spots and blurriness, she saw Chun on the ground and unconscious. Tien looked all too pleased with himself. 1, 2, 3. She couldn't believe it. The great Jackie Chun done in just like that. By that crony of Shen. Come on. Get up, Jackie. Bulma and the others cheered, but to no avail. 4, 5, 6. That was a dirty trick, and even the announcer said as much even if there was no rule against it. But Gine had to admit that it's a very effective distraction. 7, 8, 9. Just before reaching 10, Chun suddenly leapt back up to his feet. Tien's smug look was gone. How did you recover from that? Tien demanded. Chun looked at him sternly. I can't help you with that. That answer is beyond someone who follows a path of evil. Tien looked even more enraged at that, but Chun's tone softened. Listen to me, Tien. Give up Master Shen. He's not the best teacher for you, or for anyone for that matter. Chun pleaded. Tien responded by charging, Hiya. The fight continued and Tien doubled down on his attacks. Chun blocked everything Tien sent his way, but Gine could see he wasn't taking the initiative on his own either, merely defending. What was he up to? Tien threw another hard punch that Chun blocked a millisecond slower than he did a moment before. That caused him to lower his guard just enough for Tien to finally hit him across the face with another punch. Tien looked fired up from just that one blow, but Gine thought Chun's slow defense looked deliberate. Chun taunted him. You're getting weaker for losing focus, and for following Shen. You needn't have to put all your energy into just winning a silly competition. Tien growled at him. Are you kidding? It's the only thing that matters. He yelled, then froze for a moment. Chun froze for a moment too, and Gine looked towards Crane at his spot. He looked to be gloating conspiratorially. Chun suddenly wheeled around towards some human females in the audience, his seriousness replaced with the trademark perverted lust of Master Roshi. Then suddenly looked back at Tien, ashamed. What was that about? Tien looked surprised, then laughed. I get it now, so you actually are Master Roshi in disguise. Well, there goes that. Gine thought. Chun Roshi looked like he had been caught but reinserted himself into the character of Chun as if nothing happened. My words are still no less true. Was all he said. Tien looked at him menacingly. Well then, let me show you how true mine still are. Tien cupped his by his side. Ka, me, ha, me. He chanted. Does everybody know that move? Gine exclaimed mentally. Tien suddenly angled his body away from Chun and towards the spectators. Chun shouted, wait, no, not at them. Ha! Tien fired the wave. Gine's mind was in shock that Tien was doing this, and instinctively she was already in the air to head towards the blast to deflect it from the innocent bystanders in. Chun phased in front of the wave and caught in his hands, and with great difficulty deflected it upwards toward the sky. The beam disappeared from view rapidly and everyone in the audience was agape in awe that just happened, and that a contestant tried to murder them. Seeing the situation handled, Gine lowered herself back to her spot before anyone looked at her questioningly. Gohan nodded in understanding. Chun breathed heavily from the exertion of deflecting the wave. You could learn other moves instead of copying others. He said, his voice back its softer tone. Tien, you have so much potential. You just need to see the error of your ways if you learn a little humility. Chun turned his back to Tien and walked to the edge of the ring. Then, he simply stepped off the arena. Everyone gasped. Gine felt her mouth go agape. Did he just give up? The announcer was just as baffled, but didn't miss a beat. By accident or design, Chun is out of the ring, folks. That means Tien Shinhan is the winner and now the new defending champion. Everyone was silent for a moment, then cheered loudly. Tien just stood there flabbergasted for a long while, unsure of how to feel. Then he got angry, as if he just been handed the title of world champion. But why? Gine asked internally and aloud as much as Tien demanded of Chun, who was simply walking towards the arena entrance without looking back. Why won't he fight? Gine asked aloud again, thinking of everything that had occurred with Tien the night before. Weren't they all in on trying to defeat Crane and his school? Beats me, Oolong said. He may have his reasons. Gohan said, but knowing him, I'm sure his are good if he is trying to reach someone. Gine wondered what in the gods' names could that be. She knew Roshi was wise, but she was at a loss for what that could be. But whatever it was, it had better be damned good. The sixth match is about to begin. Both opponents are students of the Turtle Hermit School, Krillin and Kakarot. It's always thrilling to see teammates duke it out in the ring, and we'll get to see which one will go on to take on Tien Shinhan. Gine's attention went back to the ring following that announcement. Now her son was fighting again. This time against his own friend. So, who do we root for? Oolong thought aloud for all of them. I just realized. Bulma said softly, this is the first time they fought each other. Really? Gine asked incredulously. It's a first alright, and could be their last if they are not careful. Oolong confirmed. Who do you think is gonna win? Nobody answered, an uncomfortable air hung over them. How do you choose between two friends to fight each other to face Tien? It almost felt like sacrilege. It's going to be Kakarot. Gine said plainly. Well, that goes without saying since you're his mom and all. Oolong remarked. Well, there's more to it than that, you know. Gine chuckled. At that moment, Kakarot and Krillin entered the ring together as the audience cheered in anticipation. The rest of the gang betted it will be a draw but was broken by Blonde Launch and Chi-Chi. It's gonna be Kakarot, alright. They both said, while Chi-Chi added, no one can beat my handsome hero. Gine groaned at how dreamily Chi-Chi sounded but smiled at how much faith this girl had in her son. The boys faced each other, and their looks showed that they now saw themselves as opponents rather than friends. Good luck to you, Krillin. Kakarot said sincerely. Krillin grinned something fierce. You too, Kakarot. 'Cause you're gonna need it. HMPH, we'll see. Kakarot retorted. The two entered a long and eager stare down before the gong rang. And begin. They held their stances for a long while, dragging the tension that fell on them from the audience's silence. Kya. Krillin made the first charge and met Kakarot in the middle of the ring, the shock of their fists colliding resounding through the air. Then their limbs became a blur, and they bounced around the arena. They traded punches for kicks evenly, both of them matching each other's moves. Both blocking and attacking and making no headway as they moved around the ring at increasingly fast speeds only trained eyes could keep up with. I'm getting dizzy. Who's winning? Oolong asked. In the flurry of fists and feet, Kakarot phased behind Krillin and landed the first blow to his back. The bald boy stumbled but recovered quickly and he leapt into the air. Kakarot followed with a high jump to meet him, and then the flurry of limbs continued all the down until they landed apart from one another. An attack from behind, didn't sense you. Krillin complimented. Kakarot did the same. Thanks. And the way you dodged was good. Gine smiled at that. Even though she had seen this style of fighting countless times training with Gohan and Kakarot, it never made her feel happy to see fighting taken as a civil sport rather than a fight to the death. Krillin tightened up his stance, and suddenly the low angle of the sun's rays on his head shined right into Kakarot's eyes. He blinked rapidly at the blinding light, but it was already a big mistake as Krillin used that distraction to pounce. He landed a kick into Kakarot's face and another on top of him to drive him into the ground. Didn't miss anything, I hope. Came Roshi's voice from behind Gine. She broke away from the action to see he had joined the gang again. Where've you been? She asked. Roshi turned to her, his voice lowered so only the three of them could hear. I ran into Tien Shinhan backstage after changing back into myself. Did you two take the fight there? She asked. No, we merely talked about why I gave up the match. Gine had to ask, about that, why did you do it? Roshi answered without skipping a beat. Because I sensed something within that young man. Gine and Gohan looked confused, Gine more so. As if Roshi had just spoken gibberish and forgot about what happened the previous evening. What could you have possibly seen in him? He's in league with Crane. He's after our blood as much as his master. She demanded. I know it seems that way, even if he says as much. But I can tell you that he's not the cold-blooded killer we think he is. Roshi explained. Gine scoffed in disbelief. What makes you think that? He breaks people's legs for no reason and makes threats against our lives. Sounds like a killer to me. Roshi looked irritated that Gine would jump to such conclusions, but he stated his observations calmly. He's in complete denial that he isn't as callous as mercenary Dao and never will be. Then he added, he's a lot like you in many ways, Gine. He may come across as a protege who will gleefully follow his master orders, but he must hate it on some level. Gine was offended at the comparison and was about to retort, but Roshi went on. I know it may seem strange to see someone else do something you used to do. To put on an act while actually wasting his true potential as a good fighter. He has that capacity, but he just needs to see that path. Gohan decided to weigh in too. Like I used to say, we show those that follow a path of evil that there is always a better way through forgiveness and mercy. Gine rolled her eyes at that. Yeah, well, I don't entirely believe that truly evil people could just turn good like that. She ranted. It's just a fantasy. After all the horrible things they've done, would you really think they deserve forgiveness? Roshi and Gohan were silent at her remarks, until Gohan asked, well, how about you, my dear? You were never truly evil, were you? What? No. Gine wheeled around him vehemently. Were they really going to talk about this right here in front of everyone? I never. Even after all the things of Dawn. She caught herself, her own words replaying in her head. After all the horrible things they've done, would you really think they deserve forgiveness? Gohan and Roshi looked at her as if she had answered her own question. Gine crossed her arms and looked away in embarrassment. No, she wasn't evil. She never was. She killed so many innocents, but under orders and threats of execution if she didn't comply. And with that thought, Gine wondered of Crane, then of Tien. Could they really be just like her in some similar way? He'll turn around hopefully, said Roshi. The circumstances may not be the same as yours, but people who have it in their hearts to better themselves will do so eventually. Gine looked back at Roshi as if he had discovered some sort of truth to the mystery of the universe. Could people really have that capacity after all? No matter what they've done. But she then shook her head, remembering the name of a certain galactic tyrant that would pose a problem with this argument. No, there were some people who were just unforgivable. Hey, you guys are missing the action. Bulma said to them over her shoulder. The three snapped out of their little debate and looked toward the ring. From the look of it, the fight was still going on as Kakarot was about to attack a free-falling Krillin who somehow ended up way in the air. Gine cursed herself for ignoring her duty to cheer on her son. Krillin was wide open on his fall, and Kakarot jumped to finish him off. Krillin suddenly inflated like a balloon. Whatever that was, it delayed his fall enough for Kakarot to miss a kick. Sorry, we were distracted. Gine said aloud. What did we miss? They're neck and neck, so far. Bulma told her. Gine took a good look at the boys as they stared each other down. She immediately saw that Kakarot was holding back. He wasn't sweating or exhausted, but just toying with Krillin. Kakarot ran to the side, away from Krillin. What's he doing? Gine asked. Me. Kakarot chanted, cupping his hands as he ran. Me. He then jumped into the air and pointed his hands away from Krillin. He fired the wave. In a flash, Kakarot used the attack to rocket towards Krillin with a drop kick. Krillin had no time to react as Kakarot's foot landed on his head and the boy was slammed into the ground. Everyone flinched at the force that Krillin was struck with as he had the wind knocked out of him, and didn't get back up. I wonder if they will still be friends when this is over. Oolong said. The referee began the countdown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Krillin stirred and stood up again. Gine was impressed this human boy could even stand after being hit like that. You're not going to win that easy, he said to Kakarot, who only smirked in return. What is this play fighting? Crane shouted from his spot. Gine could sense his mood was as foul as ever. This seems more like a bad reunion. The rest of the gang heard him too, with Bulma the one to respond. if your pupils weren't maladjusted freaks, maybe they'd be happy too. Crane didn't offer a retort, just a weary glance at Gine, then back towards the ring. Krillin charged again to continue fight, and Kakarot met him in the ring's center, exchanging punches or kicks. The blows got more intense as each fighter used more and more of their strength to inflict whatever damage they could. The shocks from the hits were felt throughout the audience as they grow louder and more painful. But eventually, a threshold was reached where Kakarot was landing more hits while Krillin struggled to catch up. Giving up on punches and kicks, Krillin leapt away to put some distance between himself and his friend. Try to counter this, Krillin called out and charged with his head bent over like a ram. Kakarot just sidestepped and neck chopped him. Krillin lost steam and went down with some forward momentum, skidding to a stop. He didn't stay down for long and looked up to see Kakarot smiling at him. Krillin yelped at seeing how vulnerable he was and scurried away as fast as little legs would carry him. Krillin was starting to look desperate. The fight had been going on for a while and he was starting to get exhausted, while Kakarot didn't even break a sweat. As much as he hated to admit to himself, Krillin knew his friend was stronger and there was no way he could match his power. Krillin couldn't even go for Kakarot's tail anymore, after seeing his match with Chi-Chi. Whatever the case, Krillin was not about to give up just like that. He was no quitter, and he wasn't here to be nice. Kaya. He charged again, this time as viciously as he could to at least try to wear Kakarot out before he wore himself out first. He will try to win any way he could. Gine really admired Krillin's tenacity, for he was almost just like Kakarot in a way. If he had been born a Saiyan, he would have been unstoppable. But alas, he was not. And she knew that Kakarot was just humoring Krillin now and was wondering how long he was going to drag this out. After a series of blows traded, Krillin landed a punch hard enough to send Kakarot flying backwards. Krillin looked to celebrate at this tiny victory of managing to land a blow on his now superior friend, but the look fell when Kakarot rebounded. Kakarot looked at Krillin angrily, then phasing into translucent lines, and vanished into thin air. Kakarot, Krillin said, his eyes bulging at the feet. Where'd he go? Bulma said, just as bewildered. Everyone in the arena looked as perplexed and scanned the arena. He just disappeared. Gine could see though, as Roshi, Gohan, and no doubt Tien could also see. He didn't disappear, it was an illusion. Gine's eyes moved rapidly back and forth as she tracked his movements. He was moving so fast around the ring that everyone not keen enough couldn't see him, almost turning invisible. Kakarot's superspeed running in circles closed around Krillin. He couldn't see Kakarot but knew that he was there somewhere. He looked around himself, feeling disoriented and like a trapped animal, starting to panic. Blah. Kakarot suddenly apparated mere inches from Krillin's non-existent nose, making a funny face at him. Krillin almost jumped out of his skin at that, but as he did so, Kakarot landed 10 superfast punches and a power kick that sent Krillin flying out of the ring, crashing into the brick wall of the grandstand. He slid down the side dazed but conscious to realize he was out of bounds. Krillin is out. Kakarot is the winner, announced the referee. The crowd was too stunned to respond, but cheers slowly erupted as the viewers came to their wits from the spectacle of Kakarot's movements. A surprising end to a sensational match. Well done you two. And with that, concludes today's events and the semifinals. Join us tomorrow to see who become the next World Martial Arts Champion. Bulma, Oolong, and the others chatted away about how anticlimactic such a fight between friends was. But Gine thought it was quite a special show. To see her son fight twice in the same day and see him advance to the championship bout against his friends. He once told her that the very same friends he fought today seemed like unreachable examples of strength. She could see how he would think that, since these humans were very clever, were far more durable than she thought, and had abilities she never would have imagined. Humans were so full of surprises. And now he had made quick work of them as if they were easy pickings. It went to show just how much stronger her son had become. All that was left now was Tien Shinhan, who seemed to be absent from the arena from her spot. But she didn't worry, he'll be here tomorrow. Afterwards, they all met in the food court to get some dinner. Listen, I just wanna let you know that I think all three of you did an exceptional job out there. Bulma said. Krillin looked down, uncomfortably scratching the back of his head. I don't know about exceptional, but thanks. Bulma laughed. You're exceptional. Don't argue, I'm bigger than you. Chi-Chi didn't look too happy either. I didn't even make into the semifinals. She said on the verge of tears. Hey, that doesn't matter. Roshi offered. You made it into a slot of 8 out of 182 fighters. And you defeated almost all of them just to set foot in that ring. That in of itself is something to be proud of. Chi-Chi pondered those words. Then Kakarot put a hand on her shoulder. Yeah, Chi-Chi, almost everyone who tries to get into the tournament proper ends up failing, and you kicked all their butts. Chi-Chi's face lit up from Kakarot's encouragement. Thank you, Kakarot. You're welcome, he said, then added, just don't go for my tail next time. He winked. Chi-Chi snorted at that. She was still rather mad that she fell into such a trap, but then again it was her dirty trick to begin with. But oh well, it was only a tournament. And they had much better things to look forward to, in her wildest dreams. Blonde Launch spoke up for them too. Hey, you've all got a great left hook, take it from someone who knows. I rooted for all of you, mostly. Oolong added, slyly. Everyone laughed at that. Krillin turned to Kakarot. You did so well out there, Kakarot. You are by far the strongest fighter I've ever known. Huh, oh well, I wouldn't know about that. Kakarot said, then pointed up to Gine. I have my mom to look up to for that. And you saw how strong she was. Gine felt uncomfortable for being put on the spot by her well-meaning son. She was unsure how to take such a compliment. But she decided to just wave it away with some humility. Oh please, I'm not the fighter like my son or Gohan is. She said, trying to deflect the attention. Gohan chuckled at her sending the praise to him instead. She's just being modest. But though we taught Kakarot a lot, it was he who has grown so much and is putting all this effort. Kakarot nodded at his adoptive grandfather thankfully, then turned to his companions. Now that today is over, let's go eat. Yeah, they all second that notion, Gine included. As they started walking for the restaurant, Gine felt a familiar presence lurking in the shadows of a nearby corner. But it wasn't Crane. She turned her head around to see Tien watching them leave. Gine tensed up momentarily but released when she realized he wasn't going to ambush them here in the fading daylight with people around. But he just stared at them as they went. Gine stared back, into his contempt-filled eyes. She saw his lips move, and with her Saiyan hearing she could faintly make out the words, enjoy it while it lasts. This puny human posed no threat. She could take him out right then and there. But she didn't. She knew he meant to cause harm to her son but seemed like the type who would rather save such action for the ring for all to see. But she knew that Kakarot was stronger than him and won't break that easily. Besides, this was Kakarot's fight, not hers. You're gonna do good tomorrow, sweetheart. Gine said to Kakarot, squeezing his shoulder protectively while still staring at Tien. Huh, Kakarot looked up to his mom, confused. She looked back down at him after Tien disappeared from view. Her son was not aware of the stare-down that happened moments ago. Oh, yeah, I certainly will, Mom. I know you will, she said. Chapter 9. Kakarot vs. Tien Shinhan. It was a complete sea of people, the grounds more crowded than she had ever seen in these past few days. Gine and the gang were back in their original spots they've had throughout the tournament. They as a group all came out to root and support Kakarot. Bulma gave him a freshly washed GI just for the match. Gine and Launch cooked him an enormous breakfast, while Oolong and Puar saved their usual spots for them to watch. Yamcha even managed to sneak out of the hospital on crutches to watch, and wasn't going to let a broken leg stop him for cheering his friend. She was happy that her son was such a star to these people. To her, they were truer friends than anything a Saiyan could have ever hoped for. How had Kakarot been blessed to have such companions? When they got there, Gine, Krillin, and the rest of the gang wished Kakarot the best of luck as he went into the temple. Chi-Chi even gave him a big smooch in front of them all, which left Kakarot a shade of red in embarrassment. At the gang's viewing spot, Roshi had just finished a telepathic argument with Crane, ending with something to do about waistline issues. He had even informed them that everyone was placing bets on the match of Kakarot against that Tien. So far, odds seemed to be split evenly between the two. Gine wasn't sure how she'd feel about that, with some human nearly as strong as a Saiyan, let alone one she had a bone to pick with. Now they were being squeezed in on all sides of their spots by the influx of people who came just to see the final match. Oolong and Puar had managed to keep these spots for the gang to arrive, but just barely, as everyone was somehow driven with some infliction of getting as close to the wall as possible to be next to the ring and clamor over each other for it. And it wasn't just their area, throughout the entire grounds they were all pushing and shoving to get a good spot, some even breaking out into fights themselves. The view of the spectator stands around the arena looked to Gine more like a mosaic of people that rippled and waved like living water. It also gave her an uncomfortable reminder of just how crowded it was on their last day on planet Vegeta, just like this. But this was tens if not hundreds of times more crowded than that, far antsier for being crammed into one place, like the Saiyans were. And it somehow made her feel like looking up towards the sun, as if expecting to see Frieza's command ship looming over them, ready to blow the planet up and kill them all. She caught a glimpse of Gohan looking at her and talking to her, but she couldn't hear him. The noise of the mass of spectators drowning out his voice, and her mind drifting further into the memory. As if Frieza was actually up there, high up above and ready to kill them. Kill her, and her family. Just like that day. That day that changed her life forever, that day when. Gine. Gohan's voice rang inside her head, like it was her own thought but was his voice. And it was loud. She snapped her head towards him, startled. He looked concerned, but there was also had a hint of understanding on his face. Gohan took Gine's hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. He looked her in the eye. Deep breaths, Gine. She heard his voice again over the noise of the crowds, but she saw that his lips were not moving. Frieza is not here, you and Kakarot are safe. Gine's mouth fell agape for a moment. She was at first amazed by how Gohan was speaking to her telepathically. But then what he was saying registered in her mind. He knew what was happening, how the crowds were affecting her and what they reminded her of. She then somehow felt violated, that her own private thoughts were being read by someone else. Even if that someone was Gohan, the man who saved her and her son's life in every way someone could be saved, Gine felt like she was losing some sort of agency to her being. She wasn't sure if he was looking into her brain or her thoughts were loud enough for him to pick up, but. You were shaking. Gohan said aloud, trying to speak aloud but not enough for Bulma and the others to hear. What? Gine said, perplexed. You were shaking, as if you were about to have a panic attack. He elaborated. Gine became aware that indeed her hands were trembling slightly, and her chest ached like she had been hyperventilating. And no, your thoughts were powerful enough for me and Master Roshi to feel. Gohan added gently, I did not mean to make you feel like I was prying into your mind. I just wanted to remind you that you and your son are safe. Gine looked at him with love and thanks, with a little twinge of embarrassment too when she looked over at Roshi to see him discreetly looking at her with concern. Without further encouragement, Gine closed her eyes and shook her head gently. As if trying to wriggle away that horrid memory and ground herself back into the present. She opened her eyes again and focused on Gohan again. Thank you, she said genuinely. Whatever he did, he was right. She wasn't going to dwell on what she was thinking about here. She, along with everyone present, came to see her son fight and to vie for the title of the world's strongest. So she will focus on that instead. But then she had to ask, how did you do that, by the way? Gohan chuckled. It's not too difficult actually, like giving your own thoughts some key to be projected into others' minds with your voice. Huh, really? Gine said more to herself than to Gohan. Even something as intangible as synapses could have key. Indeed, they can. Gohan said as if on K after that thought. Gine whipped around at him, almost angrily. And I can teach you how to put up a guard for your mind so no one can read it. He said, again on cue. Gine didn't know what to make of it and just looked onto the ring. She'll want to learn that trick too sometime. The referee stepped out onto the ring, looking sharper and more prepared than he did these past few days. When he held up his microphone to begin, a buzz of excitement immediately went through the crowds. The final match of the World Martial Arts Tournament is about to begin. The announcer spoke. With the addition of almost 1,000 spectators, the wall of sound from the cheering made Gine feel like she couldn't hear her own brain. We began with 182 fighters gathered from around the world, 8 of which advanced to the quarterfinals, and now 2 are left standing, one of which will become the new master of martial arts, not to mention walk away with a cool 500,000 zenny. Not bad for a few days' work, wouldn't you say? Who will it be? While you ponder that, let me provide a little background on our contestants. First up, Tien Shinhan. Tien appeared from behind the fighter's court wall and stepped into the ring. The crowd gave him a mix of fanatic praise and leering jeers, but he didn't seem to notice or care. This skilled performer has become the fighter to watch during the tournament. Prized pupil of the Crane Hermit, Master Shen, it is widely regarded that Tien Shinhan's abilities rival, if not surpass those of his master. We've already witnessed an incredible display of his strength as he left Yamcha with a broken leg and forced previous champion Jackie Chun out of the semifinals. Combine that with the fact that his average fight time is 32.7 seconds, how he managed to fight with a broken rib and still win, then you have a glimpse into the awesome power that is Tien Shinhan. More cheers and boos came from the spectators, and the whole gang gave their very vocal disapproval. Gine briefly glanced over at Yamcha, who wore a formal suit and looked nothing out of place save for his casted leg, and he stared at Tien with nothing but contempt. Gine shared his hatred as she looked at him too and smirked to see he still stepped gingerly with his broken rib. Then the announcer pointed back towards the temple. Our second contestant is Sun Kakarot. Kakarot stepped out from behind the wall too, and everyone cheered for him. No one in the entire audience sounded like they had anything to jeer, even those who applauded Tien. And the gang went crazy. Go Kakarot! Chi-Chi shouted. Krillin joined in from his spot. Yeah, Kakarot. Beat that creep, no matter what. This pint-sized warrior serves the Turtle Hermit, Master Roshi, who coincidentally just happens to be the arch-rival of Master Shen. Aside from the fact that he received second place in the last tournament, Kakarot's list of victories would leave even the most veteran fighter green with envy. He most certainly dazzled the audience with his one-throw dismissal of the ferocious female combatant Chi-Chi, and the amazing disappearing act he used to unceremoniously remove Krillin from the ring in the previous match. His average fight time is 33.5 seconds. Gohan hummed as he sized Tien and Kakarot together. This should be one incredible finale. We're with you, Kakarot. Gine heard Bulma calling, then startled when there were gunshots fired. Gine knew that was Blonde Launch without even looking. Stop with the yakkin' and start with the smackin', she demanded. People around them look at her with fear and consternation. Bulma's cheers died down as she looked around them, embarrassed by the scene. Typical. Oolong summed it up. It was then they realized that Roshi was suddenly missing. He said he went to find a better seat. Gohan answered for him, and they all turned back to the ring. Now the battle to see who will become the champion of the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament begins. Get ready. Kakarot and Tien turned to face each other. Kakarot looked ready to pounce on the three-eyed man while Tien looked at her son with such hatred that he seemed to burn holes where he stared into Kakarot's eyes. She could almost feel the tension between them as it was a tightly wound coil ready to snap. The crowd suddenly went quiet, as the drums sounded off, faster and faster. Both combatants got into stance, and both looked eager enough to kill each other. She wondered if it would come to that. The gong sounded at last. May the best fighter win. Kakarot charged before the announcer ended his sentence. Tien punched to counter, but Kakarot dodged a split second faster and wrapped his tail around Tien's leg. He uses it to swing around and land a punch on Tien's face, sending him flying back. He landed on his feet to spring high up. Kakarot charged up with a flying kick to go after him, but Gine could see it was right into a trap. Don Ray. Tien fired. Kakarot couldn't dodge and was hit by the heat blast. The force of it sent him crashing into the ring, making a deep crater. A collective gasp of horror came from everyone, seeing the fight turn so vicious so fast. Tien landed next to the crater, gloating. The crater was deep enough that Kakarot couldn't be seen in it. Short and sweet, Tien said aloud to himself. Gine scoffed. How could he think he would win so easily? The crater rim trembled and burst in pieces as Kakarot flew out of it laughing. The crowd cheered at seeing him emerging unscathed. He shouldn't scare us like that, Bulma complained. It'll take more than a little fall to stop him, said Launch. Kakarot landed a few feet from Tien, his gloating replaced with bemused disappointment. You're gonna have to do better than that, said Kakarot, and charged at Tien. But then Kakarot sidestepped, and his form disappeared. He's vanished again. Truly one of Kakarot's greatest techniques, said the announcer. At least to everyone else, Kakarot vanished. But Gine could see her son's movements. She momentarily glanced at Tien and became concerned when she saw that he seemed like he was starting to see Kakarot's movements too. Tag! Tien shouted as he side-swiped his arm, and Kakarot suddenly appeared where Tien had smacked him out of his superspeed. Now you'll know what it means to suffer the wrath of Tien Shinhan. He charged after Kakarot mid-flight and plowed him into the ring entrance's wall in the gut, Kakarot yelling in pain. Tien then lets out a barrage of crane strikes on him while Kakarot was pinned against the wall, his feet not even touching the ground yet. Everyone was horrified by the sight, and Gine swore she heard Chi-Chi sounding hysterical, begging Tien to stop hurting him. Come on, Gine thought to her son as if he could hear her, emulating Gohan. She was sure he couldn't since she just heard of this ability, but she was going to try. You could survive this, get out. Tien kept punching like a machine gun until stopping for a moment to then ground-pounded Kakarot, sending him bouncing off the floor and coming to stop on his back, not moving. Gine gripped the side of the spectator wall without realizing she was putting cracks in it, unable to look away and will her son to get back up and punch in Tien's face. Why was he not fighting back? Tien walked up to Kakarot, grabbing a fistful of his GI without any resistance and lifting him off the ground. He laughed at how battered and in pain Kakarot looked. Don't die yet, I've got a special technique I've been saving just for you, he menacingly said to Kakarot's unmoving form. This could turn out to be the shortest finale in the tournament's long history. What will Tien Shinhan do next is anyone's guess, though I'll wager it won't bode well for Kakarot. Bulma couldn't stand to watch what was happening. Poor Kakarot. She and Chi-Chi started to cry. Yamcha tried to sound encouraging, he'll pull through, don't worry. But Launch wasn't having any of it. Come on kid, you've got tougher skin than that. Gine never heard more truer words in her life, and Kakarot was just taking the abuse without fighting back. And somehow, Gine felt spurred on by Launch's declaration to speak up for once. Wake up, son. Gine yelled. You are a Saiyan warrior. Show that pathetic human who's boss. A group of spectators next to them, fans of Kakarot judging from how they cheered, looked over to Gine. One of them asked to themselves, what's a Saiyan? Gine looked away like she was caught. So, she pretended she didn't hear them and focused on the ring. Tien tossed Kakarot into the air then turned around to face the audience, his friends in particular. The volleyball technique, he shouted. As Kakarot fell, Tien clutched his hands together and hit the smaller boy up into the air again. Kakarot fell and Tien struck him higher and higher, again and again like a beach ball. Tien looked like he was having fun more than seeking vengeance. It looks like Tien's unusual technique is exactly what it says. He's toying with Kakarot like a volleyball and setting him up for a spike. After the last strike, Tien jumped higher than Kakarot was thrown. Get ready. And spike. With one really hard punch, Kakarot was sent slamming back down to the ground like a meteor, making yet another deep crater. No. Gine heard Chi-Chi cry out. As the dust settled, Kakarot was splayed inside the crater and looked motionless. Tien smirked in satisfaction. Is he breathing? Chi-Chi asked affrightedly. Get up. Yamcha and Krillin shouted. Their friend couldn't have been beaten that easily. As if on cue, Kakarot suddenly sprung up on his feet, completely unfazed. Tien was as shocked as he was disappointed. What? No way. Incredible. Kakarot is on his feet again. The announcer said. Kakarot, don't frighten us like that, okay? Next time get up sooner, said Bulma, half laughing and half crying that he was okay. Chi-Chi wasn't much better. I don't get it, why isn't Kakarot fighting back yet? Krillin asked aloud. Gine thought the same herself, flabbergasted and infuriated that her son was just taking this abuse from this jerk. But she saw Kakarot smirking, and then she knew. He was measuring Tien up, or toying with him. Or both. If he knew how strong his opponent was now, then he could take whatever was to be thrown at him. It was a risky but brilliant strategy. But it still didn't ease her anger from her maternal instincts. That kid's tough as nails, go get him Kakarot, shouted Yamcha. Well, it's nothing short of miraculous that Kakarot's even alive, let alone standing after such a brutal punishment. That was interesting, but I don't think I enjoy being the ball. Kakarot said as he finished brushing himself off. Tien looked at him with contempt, but oddly with a touch of admiration too. Well, you're resilient. Stupid, but resilient. Kakarot smirked back at Tien, and you are not very nice, but you are strong. I guess it would be safe from here on out if I used my full strength. Tien laughed sarcastically. Let me guess, you've been holding for my safety. Kakarot nodded. Yeah, but I'll fight normal now. Whenever I fight in a match, I have to watch myself, so I don't get carried away. I call it my battle strength. Tien looked at him mockingly, then turned serious. I'll tell you what, the goal here is for you to die. How that happens I really don't care. So, you have fun with your little battle strength and then I'll kill you. Kakarot looked back at him just as mockingly. Fine, you can try. I won't have to try. It's too easy, said Tien. Kakarot laughed hard. Easy, if you say so. After all, the only other person I ever fight all out with is my mom. And I saw how long, or should I say how short, you lasted against her. That rib healed up all nicely. Tien looked shocked and then flustered as he remembered the humiliating pain she inflicted on him. Gine didn't like being mentioned on stage but couldn't help smiling at her son's praise. Kakarot continued. She's my training partner, and we fight for hours almost every day, so hopefully you can at least try to get close to her level. Tien looked furious. He would not stand this kind of ridicule. It doesn't matter. I will kill you, and unlike your mommy, it's a fight to the death. Kakarot snickered. His Saiyan lust for such a challenge was in full swing. One I've been waiting for. The announcer looked confused but sensed more action coming. What? Get ready. Here comes round 2. Kakarot leapt after Tien faster than he could block, punching him in the nose and solar plexus at once. Tien was momentarily dazed, and the blow to his chest with its aggravated rib had the wind knocked out of him, leaving him exposed for Kakarot to machine gun punch his abdomen to make Tien double over. Then Kakarot landed a flying kick to Tien's face that sent him flying across the ring. Kakarot sprung under him and used both his short legs to kick him high into the air. Then he cupped his hands. Me, he began. Wow, Kakarot is on a roll as he prepares to dazzle us with his Kamehameha wave, the signature technique of the turtle hermit. But Kakarot didn't fire the beam. Hold on. What's this? In a bizarre shift in strategy, Kakarot has withdrawn his technique, giving Tien Shinhan time to recover. This might go down as the turning point in the battle. What are you doing? Bulma said aloud to Kakarot. Tien came hurtling back down and landed one foot and knee. He clutched his chest in pain, the fractured rib flaring up. Kakarot giggled. That's what I call battle strength. Tien smiled through the pain though, and then he began to laugh heartedly. What's so funny? Kakarot asked. Tien looked at him bemused. Thank you for that. That exhilarating rush. I haven't felt this alive in a long time. It feels wonderful. Kakarot was confused. So, what you are saying is you like getting beat up? Bulma spoke for what they were all thinking. I don't get it. Why would Kakarot pass up the perfect opportunity to finish him off? It doesn't make any sense. He had a good reason, I hope. Yamcha said, not too convincingly but still trusted his friend. Gine knew. Kakarot saved energy by not firing the wave, and Tien would have dodged and left him vulnerable. Good idea. But there was something even deeper to it. Something that she knew all Saiyans had, and as much as she hated to admit it deep down, she had too. A craving for a decent challenge. Tien started hovering cross-legged, then on his feet. All right, I've indulged you long enough, now it's time to pay. I don't think so. Kakarot shouted back. Tension in the ring is high. Despite the extraordinary displays at resilience and strength, neither combatant shows any signs of fatigue. They charged at each other, meeting in the middle of the ring, trading blows evenly. Kakarot's small size being advantageous to dodging and landing hits in weak spots, but Tien's powerful blows sent Kakarot reeling whenever he got struck. This fight looked like it could go either way. Rarely have we seen fighters display such an unrelenting fury. Tien and Kakarot are taking this fight to a whole new level, everything is to the extreme. A normal person at the receiving end at those punches would never wake up. They both stopped trading blows and leapt away from each other to a safe distance. Both combatants calm and without any sweat broken. They get into stance, ready to go at it again. Kakarot's tail twitched in anticipation. Tien went after him with machine gun-like crane strikes that Kakarot blocked. Then they increased their speed until the fight became a blur to everyone else except Gine. They were going so fast even the announcer couldn't see what was happening. But the judges won't be able to enforce rules that don't exist in regard to record speed fighting. Bulma and the others were cheering and shouting for Kakarot on where his next moves ought to be. They couldn't possibly see what was going on save for Roshi and Gohan, but she kept feeling more and more touched by their support. Kakarot went on the offensive explosively, pushing Tien to the very edge of the ring with no room to move. Gine felt so into the fight she felt as if she were on the edge too. She felt a crunch in her hands and caught herself when she realized she had been crushing the bricks where she gripped the spectator wall. The people next to her looked terrified that some woman could grind bricks into dust. She flushed red with embarrassment and looked away from them, hoping they would stop staring at her. Back in the ring, Tien deftly broke free of Kakarot's barrage to expel him from the ring and got back into the center of the arena to counterattack. But Kakarot suddenly splits into several Kakarots at once surrounding Tien, all frozen in place. You whelp, I can't be fooled by optical illusions. But you're about to learn that now. Tien declared. He strikes a Kakarot that charged from behind, but it was an apparition. Gotcha. Another Kakarot charged, but he went right through Tien. Now who's seeing double? Tien taunted and swung at another Kakarot. His hit connects with the boy solidly. Tien yells victoriously as Kakarot fell to the ground. But then he simply fades. Tien realized too late that it was also an apparition as another Kakarot flew at him with a double kick. The blow sent Tien into the ground with a earth-trembling thud. Gine could only watch in awe as the son who struck Tien also faded. How many fake Kakarots were there? The others faded as the real Kakarot stood at Tien's feet. The crowd went wild. Spectacular. I don't think anyone could label that as anything less than extraordinary, as Kakarot's mastery of the mirror image technique has left Tien face down. I guess there's a first time for everything, Kakarot said to Tien's earlier declaration as he struggled to get up. Tien looked at Kakarot angrily. Fool, you think your infantile tricks could defeat me? Me? You are barely even a challenge. I dunno, it looked like you had to fight pretty hard. Kakarot countered with a hint of salt in his voice. Now Tien was enraged. You dare mock me? Now prepare to suffer my wrath. He held up his open hands to his head. Solar flare, he shouted as the world went blinding white. Gine had barely enough reflex time to put on her shades before her head felt like it was splitting open and seeing spots behind her eyelids. When her sight adjusted, she could see Tien charging at Kakarot while he seemed to not move. Kakarot suddenly grabbed Tien's fist in mid-punch. Before the shock could register on Tien's face, Kakarot right-hooked Tien in the chest exactly where Gine had struck him in the ribs a couple nights ago. Tien cried out in agony as a loud crack came from him, as Kakarot hit him hard enough for even her to feel his pain. If his rib wasn't broken thoroughly before, it was now. As the blinding light of the flare faded, a sly smile appeared on Gine's face as she saw Kakarot had put his shades on at the last moment. Such a perfect surprise, she thought, by improvising with his full moon glasses. Gine swore her son was becoming more and more clever than she ever thought. Whoa, there's something you don't see every day. Kakarot pulled out some stylish shades to protect his eyes at the last moment. And now Tien is down and looks way out of sorts. Tien lay collapsed on his side, clutching his chest, and looked in complete pain, almost incapacitated by the now very broken rib. He looked up at Kakarot and spoke through gritted teeth. How did you survive? Kakarot posed and did a peace sign as Roshi would. My sunglasses. With Tien writhing on the ground, the announcer began the countdown. 1, 2, 3. It seemed all but certain that Kakarot would claim the match. 4, 5. But before long and with great difficulty, Tien managed to stand back up. Gine, the gang, and the rest of the crowds were just as stunned that he won't give up. What was this guy made of? Gine thought. The announcer then looked concerned as Tien staggered and clutched his rib, visibly cracked. Hey, let's get a medic here since I'm not too sure about fighting with a broken rib is a good id. No doctors, Tien shouted, then looked back at Kakarot. You don't give up, do you? Kakarot said with an ounce of respect. Tien clutched his side with one hand and shook his other at Kakarot with a clenched fist. Give up now, if you know what's good for you, he demanded. Leave him alone, you big bully. Bulma shouted from her spot, then looked embarrassed. Kakarot chuckled. You are not in any position to ask me to give up, especially with that rib. Whether you like it or not, I never quit for anyone. Tien gave him a glare that could kill. Very well then, you'll pay for that cheap shot. Kakarot acted offended. Cheap shot? I'm not the one who broke someone's leg when they were down for the count. As far as I'm concerned, you had it coming. And now it's a weak spot for you to defend, so have fun with that. He said mockingly. Gine was slightly disturbed by this. Given Tien's brutal tactics, she guessed it evened out that he got what he served, but now Kakarot was fighting dirty too. And if Tien was as brutal in a fair fight, what would he do now? They charged against each other with Tien keeping an arm back to defend his broken rib, leaving only an arm to attack and block. Gine's fears seemed to vanish for a moment. Kakarot could definitely win this, she thought without a doubt. Suddenly in midair, Kakarot froze in the middle of a charge and did not move or do anything as Tien struck him viscously with a right hook that sent him across the ring. What was that? She thought. Tien looked like he got his confidence back. Kakarot looked dazed. No fair. Tien, after what he was just dealt moments ago, laughed heartedly. So what? Kakarot got back on his feet with some difficulty. You rely on too many tricks. Stop complaining, now either fight me or step out of the ring. Never, Kakarot said defiantly. Fine, then when you meet Dao, tell him I sent you. Tien said as they charged and traded blows evenly again, jumping high. Then, Kakarot froze again. Gine thought it was a fluke, but it was happening again, and it looked unnatural. Kakarot was now helpless as Tien landed a power kick to his face that sent him flying down out of the ring. He kept falling, not doing anything. He was out for sure. No, Gine cried out, her heart sinking as he got closer and closer to the ground. But then, Kakarot looked to concentrate as he fell, then slowly, his fall slowed down until he finally stopped just a few feet off the ground outside the ring. What? She heard Tien and Crane shout simultaneously. Their eyes were not deceiving them. Kakarot was floating. Gine couldn't believe it. He finally figured it out in time to save him. What an amazing sight, folks. It seems like Kakarot has the gravity-defying ability to fly as well as Tien and Xiaosu, and has made an ultimate recovery from falling out of the ring. It goes to show that Kakarot is one amazing fighter who can do quite about almost anything. Kakarot hovered back over the arena and set himself down on his feet in front of a dumbstruck and enraged Tien. How did you do that? He demanded. The flying technique is something only my master can teach. Kakarot laughed happily. I finally figured out how to channel my energy to hover my body weight by watching your friend Xiaosu against Krillin. Tien looked even more confused and angry. That still doesn't answer my question. How did you even learn the ability to fly at all? My mom taught me, he said matter-of-factly. She's been trying to teach me for a while, but I finally figured it out. Then he turned toward her in the crowd and waved. Hey mom, I finally figured it out. He shouted to her excitedly. Gine chuckled embarrassingly as everyone looked at her in amazement that she could even fly as well, not appreciating the attention as much as the thanks. She had been hammering home how to get him to focus his energy to force his body above ground, and he has struggled so much, barely able to lift his own weight a few mere inches. But she figured after seeing someone else do it, he was able to figure it out. She felt mixed emotions as to how she failed as a teacher or Saiyan mother about how to do something basic as flying, or how proud she is that her son is so observant and can learn just about anything from anywhere, making himself into an amazing fighter. Tian felt entirely the opposite, a technique so sacred to his school now being utilized by this insolent little twerp and his monster of a mother to mock him and Dao. He looked seething and charged while Kakarot's back was turned. Kakarot turned in time to react and dodge. The fight then continued in earnest. Kakarot froze again and was struck by several punches, unable to block at all. Gine could definitely see it now and saw on Kakarot's face that it was not him doing it on purpose. It looked like someone, or something was definitely manipulating her son's body like he was being controlled. Enough, Kakarot demanded as he got back up. I'm tired of your sneaky tricks. This got her attention, now it was definitely not a fluke or suspicion. Tian looked taken aback too. Tricks? What tricks? I don't know what your angle is, but my kicking your tail is all skill. I call it cheating, Kakarot said seriously. Tian chuckled, I don't care. All I know is I don't use excuses to cover up a failure. That's your way. Kakarot charged angrily but Tian didn't move, then Kakarot froze, again. Gine saw Tian didn't do anything either, he wasn't concentrating on anything, just readying to attack. It couldn't be him but rather an outside force. Then she noticed Yamcha looking over at the direction of Crane, and her blood boiled in anger. It was Xiaosu, his finger pointed at Kakarot and glowing. So, it was magic. And they are cheating. Rapid velocity technique. Tian shouted. Gine looked back at the ring to see Tian's arms blur to a whirlwind, landing hundreds of smacks a second on him, and Kakarot could only take it until he fell to the floor after a brutal beating. He looked like he was still conscious, but he wasn't getting back up. Get up, Kakarot, Bulma and the girls shouted. He wants to, but I don't think he has a choice in the matter. Yamcha spoke. The whole group looked at him for an explanation, but Gine spoke instead as she and Yamcha saw what was going on. That creepy doll-like child, Xiaosu, is using some sort of mental telepathy to manipulate Kakarot's body. Barely containing the anger in her voice. Launch was more than pissed. Is that a fact? She said, clenching her teeth. She then pulled out a gun and stared threateningly through the crowd at the direction of Master Shen and Xiaosu. Every poor spectator in the path of her stare screamed bloody murder and fled. The announcer began the countdown as Kakarot still couldn't get back up from that last attack. Was that 25 or 30 hits? I lost count. Tian taunted to her paralyzed son. Either way, I expected a challenge. You're just as predictable as my other opponents and just as weak. He started to walk away, certain of his victory. Predictable, came from Kakarot. Tian turned in surprise only to have his face kicked, landing on his back. Tian was stunned that Kakarot had somehow managed to get back up, but he was even more furious that this boy wouldn't stay down. He rubbed his face as a large bruise began to form. You'll regret that, Tian said as he got up. You should have stayed down. Kakarot looked him in the eye without fear. Do your worst, but I'm not going to lose to a coward like you. Tian looked indignant at this accusation. Oh really? And just how am I a coward? They charged, but Gine watched as Crane's lips moved saying something to Xiaosu and his finger glowed, and Kakarot froze. So, it was true, they all saw it and it was as solid of proof that Crane was cheating as anything. Xiaosu was directly freezing Kakarot in place to be held down like a punching bag as Tian landed barrages of hits onto her son. After another barrage of strikes from Tian that were much more brutal than the last, with Kakarot unable to defend himself, he collapsed to the ground and didn't move. Gine saw Xiaosu's finger still glowing and guessed they were going to hold him down for the count this time. Okay, she thought, enough was enough. Gine's fists clenched, glaring directly at Crane and Xiaosu. It was one thing to cheat a Saiyan in battle, but to treat her son as a worthless piece meat by someone who thought was better was another thing entirely, not to mention as a mother her son could die in such a dishonorable way. She was about to march straight over to Crane and Xiaosu and blast them on the spot, competition be damned. Grr. That's it. Launch spoke for Gine's thoughts just as she stomped in the direction of Crane, taking the initiative instead. Whatever she was going to do, she better do it quick since it looked like Kakarot won't hold out for much longer before he got disqualified. Launch came up right behind Crane as not so stealthily as she could, with a comically large mallet. She lifted it high, about to hit him in the head with it. But as she brought the mallet down over him, Crane caught it with just his fingertip without even turning his head to look. Launch looked amazed. But before she could react, Crane flicked the mallet to send it flying away backwards, with Launch still clutching it, flying away with it. With that, Gine shook her head in exasperation. She'll have to do the deed herself and started to hurry in Crane's direction. Tien looked like he saw what they were trying to do, and Kakarot grabbed his leg while lying on the ground barely conscious. You cheated me, he croaked out before passing out. Gine stopped her marching as she saw that Tien was just looking at Crane and just stared at him. What was he doing? A moment later, Tien looked back at Kakarot, as if to prepare to strike him down for good but relented after hesitating. Tien Shinhan, Crane shouted. Leave me alone, Tien shouted back at his master. That was kinda weird. The announcer spoke for all of them. Kakarot got back up to his feet. Gine was relieved he wasn't permanently damaged after being rendered helpless after that last beating. It's my turn now, Kakarot said as he began to charge at Tien. Kakarot, stop, came a voice from behind the entrance curtain to the ring. Kakarot stopped, looking confused as he saw who called out to him, and saw when Gine did too. So that's where Roshi's been hiding. Gine thought to herself as she saw her son's master and Krillin observing from the wall. He must die, Crane demanded to Tien. I am your master, and you must obey my command. Tien looked back at Crane forlorn, then replied with a patient gentleness Gine had never seen before. I've done as you asked. I have defeated your enemies and defended the honor of our school. The success of this match is in my hands alone. I do not need assistance. Then prove it. Crane shot. Destroy him at once. Tien looked down at Kakarot who looked at him confused but expectant. No, Tien said. I won't kill Kakarot. Doing so would cause me to lose this match. Crane looked enraged. Never mind the stupid match. Make no mistake, you are a killer. Or do you forsake your destiny? Tien looked at Crane with defiance for the first time. No master, my destiny is not what you'd have me believe. I'm no killer. Gine was speechless. Moments ago, this man was hellbent on destroying her son for a simple transgression. Now, seeing him walk away from a path of darkness and from a horrible master, she wasn't sure how to take this in. Humans were such confusing yet amazing creatures that still never ceased to surprise her. Crane didn't think so, his face red with rage at Tien's betrayal. You weak coward, insolent fool, you have allowed that senile turtle hermit to warp your mind. The announcer stepped in. Excuse me, but I can't allow you to disrupt the F. I'm speaking, Crane shouted at the poor guy, then turned back to Tien. I made you, Tien. All that you are has sprung from my generous hands. And now your insubordination has clenched them into fists. Now you'll pay. Some generous master you are. Gine said under her breath to Crane, knowing all too well the kinds of people who would turn against their own no matter how much they had done for them. As far as she was concerned, he was no better than the super elites who toyed with her, or even someone like Frieza. Then he turned toward Xiaosu. Xiaosu, paralyze them both. He commanded. But the doll-like child looked at his master like he was afraid of him and did nothing. Xiaosu. Crane shouted again, his composure cracking even further. The poor child looked away as if ashamed. I'm sorry, master. I will do anything you ask of me. But I cannot hurt my friend Tien Shinhan. This almost brought Gine to tears. Now this doll child she thought of as nothing more than a sworn enemy was turning against the dark path to save his friend was truly amazing. This tournament and its drama really was getting to her. Crane finally lost it. With his students turned against him and his brother about to go unavenged, the Crane hermit looked not like some distinguished martial arts teacher rather than a seething psychopath on the brink of flying into a rampage. Come here, he growled as he grabbed Xiaosu by the collar. The poor boy looked so scared by the man he trusted as his mentor, and cried out as Crane raised a hand to strike him down.